Good afternoon. This is a public hearing for the Board of Standards and Appeals, February 3rd, 2015. The zoning calendar, new cases. Item number 1, 30113BZ, 1502 Avenue N, Brooklyn. Oh, the mic wasn't on. Shoot. Item number 1, 30113BZ, 1502 Avenue N, Brooklyn. Must have picked it up.
Hello, good morning, Madam Chair. Eric Palatnik. We attended your review session yesterday, and we heard your questions, and we'd like to give you some more information, which of course we'll be able to supplement later in writing. Your questions were quite exhaustive and quite thorough, and I think we've gotten the gist of the essence of them. Obviously, the application today is for really it's a college, Central Yeshiva Beis Yosef. And with me here today are members of the college, and it's Rabbi Nekritz, Rabbi Drilling, is that correct? Drillman? I just met him today, and Rabbi Joffin, who I've been working with for the past 8 months on the application. It's really Rabbi Joffin's baby, for lack of a better word. He comes from a long history of families that have provided religious-based college-level education to their students. And actually, it was in Poland, was it, that in 1890, his grandfather started, and until the outbreak of World War II, up until that point, they had almost 10,000 students in 80 facilities around Poland. 10,000 students. Obviously, the Holocaust changed quite a few things, and the student population unfortunately diminished. Well, when he came to America, when his parents came to America, and when he was here, they started doing the exact same thing and rebuilding. And the facility that we're here for today, which is on Avenue N, which I know you're very familiar with, was purchased by his organization about 10 years ago, as they were growing more and more and more. And I know your board had questions: are they there legally now? Are they not there legally now? There's a gray area if they're legal or not, because right now the facility they purchased an existing synagogue, and it's still utilized as a synagogue, and it's a very active synagogue. And I realized when I went through my papers last night, we didn't really highlight that for you. And I'm sure there was some confusion by you when you were looking at the existing conditions plans and reading our narrative, saying, what's going on? It shows synagogue, and I think I heard it in your comments yesterday. What's happened through the course of the past decade is, while the synagogue remains in full force and is utilized on a daily basis with prayer session to 150 congregants who live in the area, who are not a part of the college, as well as on the Sabbath, as well as on the high holy days and all holidays. In addition to that, the rabbi started having his students come in and started teaching when he wasn't a college at that point. He just got his accreditation as a college this year. They got it. The application's been in for a while, but it was just granted by the Association of Advanced Rabbinical and Talmudic Schools, which empowers them to grant a Bachelor of Arts that is a recognized undergraduate degree that is recognized by every educational institution in the United States as well as worldwide. So they've created within the past decade a college, and the college has sort of morphed into itself, because originally it wasn't a college. In 2004, when he purchased the building, it wasn't a college. It was really just educational classes being given. And as time went on, the students demanded of the rabbi that they have the opportunity to both earn their degree, and also qualifies them to such programs as financial aid and other different governmental assistance that many students use when they go through college. You can see that the room is filled with many of the students. If you could raise your hands, the students here. Not all of them are going to speak. Don't worry, Ms. Matthias. But they're here today as a sampling of them are here to speak about the question that you raised earlier yesterday, which is, why do they need a dorm? Why do they need to live here? And I'm going to give you some more information in addition to what we gave you in our paperwork, but they're also going to explain to you. There's a gentleman here that's from France who's representative of the foreign population that studies there. There's a gentleman here from Chicago that's representative of the people that don't live in New York. And there are other people that live in other parts of New York State that aren't here, but they also need housing. They'll speak about that. But going back to the building itself, the building was designed as a synagogue. And it was then, through the past decade, that it's grown in its uses. And it's grown to the point where it is today, where the educational component of the yeshiva, or the college, is really taking over the synagogue. Although it was a shul at the beginning where he taught some classes. Now it's turning more into almost a 50-50 split between the two. It's still actively utilized as a shul, and he's got the college going on. He's got 150 students that are there on a daily basis. And the way it works is that throughout the day, the students, 7:30 in the morning, they start their studies. And I gave you the program, and we could talk about it in a little more, but the studies go through the entire day, from 7:30 in the morning until 11:30 at night. In between those studies, there's prayer sessions. There's a morning prayer, there's an afternoon prayer, and there's an evening prayer. During the prayer sessions, the synagogue, which doubles as a base midrash, which I know that I haven't had a conversation of base midrash yet with Madam Chair Perlmutter, but I know I have with the other commissioners and the vice chair before there was the switch in chairs. But the base midrash, for the purpose of the record, is a room that's utilized as an educational room where the students gather with each other and they almost debate one another on different points of the Talmud. And they go through it point by point, and they have lively debates in an open environment, and that's what the base midrash has been used for. And you can see there's a class that's at the first floor, and that's with the synagogue / base midrash, and there's a room off of that.
On the drawings, there are things like multi-purpose dining room.
That's at the basement level, yes.
The basement level, the plans say social hall and synagogue.
Right.
Which is the base midrash?
The synagogue on the first floor
Synagogue is the base midrash.
is the base midrash, and that's my fault. Louis Garfinkel is the project architect, is here, and I had him draw pursuant to the C of O, which is how it's described on a certificate of occupancy, and that's where I understand there was some confusion, which I take the credit for. I should have had him draw up a second set of plans, something to the effect of how utilized or something, to give you more of an effect. He drew according to the C of O. But
And then what's the multi-purpose room described on the statement of facts? That's the social hall. What's the social hall?
well, the social hall right now is unfortunately being used as classrooms because we have 120 students that are fitting into the two spaces, the base midrash / synagogue on the first floor and the social hall, which goes into the meals. That's why all the meals are catered.
But, sorry.
Go on,
You
yes.
describe in the statement of facts something called a multi-purpose dining room. What is that?
That's the social hall, the
Okay.
basement. That's on the proposed plans. That's how it's labeled. And that's the basement level. So the way that it's currently utilized now is the basement level, which is the social hall it's got the warming kitchen. During the school use, when the college uses it, it's where students are praying. If you go in there today, if you left here after the hearings and you went there, or you sent somebody over right now, you'd see all the students studying and doing their thing down there, and you see them all on the first floor as well. When it's time to eat, food is brought in. And food is brought in simply because there's no room right now to prepare food, and there's no room right now for a real dining room area. So it's sort of ad hoc. When the proposal, should your board grant the proposal, that cellar level can then revert to its true intended use, which is as a social hall / dining area, and the kitchen could actually start to be utilized as a kitchen, and that could have been made clear in our plan, in our
So
paper.
then, to be clear, the space down in the basement in the proposal will be used as a dining area and
We use it's proposed to be used as a dining area and as a social area for the students, so that they can interact with each other.
or when do they do the interacting with each other?
In between classes, when they have time, when they have a break, they can go down there, they can get a snack, they can go down there. There could be some types of recreation down there they're anticipating. They'll be able to basically, the intention is to create a campus facility here. So not every waking moment is of course, going to be spent either sleeping, eating, or studying the Talmud. There are some moments where they do get the chance to converse with one another and hang out and recreate with one another. And that's what that space is going to be utilized for. It's also going to be put to the true purpose, which we know of in the Jewish religion, which is after the meal, after the Sabbath, after the ceremony services, it's used as a place for people to go and to have a bite to eat and to socialize once again. So it actually has dual purposes, both for use within the congregation as well as use within the college use. And
Wait, sorry, let's do that one again. So then the congregation, who's not the students,
correct.
would be going there
After Friday night services,
after
for example.
services, and they go down there for
Coffee, cake, and
all
the events that, if you've been to any of the Jewish events.
Okay. So one of the things that we asked for, because it's really not clear, is a how the building is used, specifically, listing each space, and it's actually much easier to do this on the plans, but listing each space and saying, in the hours of this to that, this space is currently used this way. And that means we don't have the room to do X, Y, Z. And in the proposal, this space will be used from the hours of this to this, in this way. And every time there's a shift in use, because it's described as a multi-purpose room, and it obviously is the way you're describing it, who's using it when? It's a way to
Understood.
understand the occupancy of this space.
And we can give that to you very simply. To walk you through for the proposal, it's relatively simplistic, and we'll put it in writing for you. There are 7 proposed classrooms, which are proposed to be located, there's 6, excuse me, 4 that are, thank you for correcting, 4 at the proposed second floor, and 1 space on the first floor off of the existing synagogue that could hold 24 students. The 4 classrooms have been designed to accommodate 67 students, and I know you asked yesterday what the standard is, the basis of a room and how we came to the size of the room. Mr. Garfinkel, the project architect, is here. He used the 1 per 20 square feet, 1 student per 20 square feet, which I believe he derived from both the building code as well as from his own personal experience. Mr. Garfinkel is quite active in this community, doing very many educational institutions and schools and classrooms and the like. And 1 per 20 is a modest number, and it allows for the space for desks and other equipment, and as well as teachers to be in the room with them as well. But the
So
total,
will all classrooms have desks, and is counting the 20 square foot
To
per
include
person as a desk unit? And
Correct.
Or is this sort of multifunctional, or the desks?
no, the desks won't move in the classrooms. The classrooms that are being proposed are lecture rooms, and you would go in there just like you're sitting right now, with the space in front of you, with a chair, with an ability to plug in the computers and everything else, and we're all
So
laptops.
stationary.
Stationary furniture. I mean, it might be, it won't be drilled into the floor. It'll be able to move around, but it'll be desks.
So they're not, it's not like a seminar style.
No, it's not a seminar style necessarily, but the desks will be mobile so that they could clean and manipulate. If they have a working session, they want to put in a circle or things like that.
Actually, to help us understand, actually furnishing the plans would be really helpful to just have us understand how things are used, not just the furniture will be part of the approval, obviously.
We could do that.
That way we can see how, like for instance, I believe there's, where it shows the tables, right,
We can do that. It's not on the plans, but
So, and so with respect to the classrooms also, like, the classrooms are occupied between the hours of this and this.
that's the easiest part of the whole thing. The classrooms are 7:30 in the morning till 11:30 at night.
Well, but actually, according to how you're explaining it, there's a point where everybody leaves and they go down and eat. So the classrooms are actually empty. at
For one,
lunchtime.
yes, for one, when the students will eat, yes, the classrooms will be, and during prayer session as well,
Right.
the
so
classrooms will be
that's
empty.
for a schedule where maybe all the students don't all go at the same time, maybe they're staggered. That's information about the use of the classroom.
We'll give that to you and we'll show you, but primarily they do all pray together and they dine together. That's the intention, to have everybody together. That's the philosophy that's bringing this whole application to you, is that the goal is to have everybody together all the time because it's part of the learning experience. So the 67 students could be, as we were just talking about, 91 students can be accommodated in all of the classrooms. And that includes the base mid-rosh space with 24 off of the first floor that has 24, occupancy of 24, and then 67 on the second floor.
But, sorry, 91 including the baby.
Correct.
So 67.
It's including the room off of the base mid-rosh, that room in the back that says
Including the
24.
room adjacent to it.
Correct, that shows 20, occupancy by 24. So the thinking, to conceptualize it for you, is that half of the student population will be in class at one time, and the other half will be either in what's marked as the synagogue/base midrash, or downstairs in the recreational space/dining area. And when they're not in a formal classroom, they'll be engaged in base midrash type discussions in both of those rooms. So each of those rooms will still act as they act today, but now they are the only place for the students to go to. There is nowhere else within the building for the students to go to, and it's barely accommodating everybody right now.
Okay, so what you said before, though, was that the rooms are going to be, the classrooms are occupied all the time. That's not true.
Correct.
The
Right, but then when they're
Right.
not in the classrooms, the other students will be in the classrooms. So the classrooms, unless,
So you mean you have twice as many students as there are classrooms?
no, yes, yes, correct. There's 180 students total, classroom seating for 91 to be exact. So
But the proposed has seating for 91.
the proposed has seating for 91. So when 91 of the students are not in their formal classrooms, they'll be engaged in spiritual debates in the base midrash. They won't necessarily be in a formal lecture room. What the classroom enables, and the rabbi, I know he's chomping at the bit to explain it. He's saying, you know, but he'll come up here and explain in more clarity. But the philosophy and the theory of it is that by adding the classrooms, they could add specialized classes that aren't necessarily generic to every student at the same time. And they could offer more classrooms because now they have individual spaces, more classes, because now they have individual spaces, so they could add more subjects to the curriculum. At the end of all of this, just so we're clear too, the goal is that the students are going to become rabbis. Hopefully you're looking at a room here full of rabbis. And to give you an idea of how religious they are, I sat outside speaking to them, and I explained to them in my Palatnik kind of way, where I said, you know, the zoning board is a little concerned. They don't really understand your housing and why you need to be located, why you can't just be in a building nearby. And I said, you should explain to them that this is not like the movie Animal House, to which I got a lot of blank stares. Nobody's ever seen the movie, any movie, nevertheless Animal House. But, right, there's some humor there, but they're doing better things. But the point that they're going to speak to you about, which I'm circling into right now, is I know the board, one of the questions is, why do they have to be there? Why do they have to be there? And the reason they have to be there, and they'll speak to it a little more, but it was really best enunciated by a previous board in an application that Sheldon Lobel did, the Yeshiva Tifereth Yisrael, which is located on East 36th Street in Brooklyn. It was granted in 2005. And this is a quote from the resolution, and we'll hand it into the board later. It says, whereas, finally, as to the dormitory facility, the applicant explains that the post-high school program students are engaged in an extremely rigorous educational experience which necessitates that they reside as close to the base of study as possible. Whereas the applicant also states that the dormitory facility will allow the yeshiva to attract high-caliber students and remain competitive with other similar educational institutions. That says it best. These students are here, much different college or postgraduate experience than I had. These students are here to be educated all the time in a religious-based education. But to do that, they're going from 7:30 in the morning until 11:30 at night, stopping for breaks, stopping for some prayers, and then going back to their studies. And at the end of the day, at 11:30 at night, it breaks up the sense of closeness and community and cohesiveness that the rabbi is trying to instill in everybody, to tell all of them, go home, come back tomorrow. By having them there, they get more of that interaction with each other in the down times. They socialize more with one another, and the rabbi gets the opportunity to speak to them and to mentor them and to pick out the student who he wants to talk to. And so it's not all on a schedule type basis. I'm sure you can understand this. Many of you, I'm sure, have gone to college where you went away to school. It's a similar type of reasoning for it here. It's a college, and to have that experience is even more important in this case.
Question.
Yes.
You said that there are competitive institutions that have this kind of facility.
Yes.
Other than that one from the 2005 approval, if you could also tell us what that.
We'd be happy to, and I'm sure the rabbi is chomping at the bit
No,
to
but,
tell you that.
so yeah, we need some other examples where they actually are doing that. And maybe we'll talk about the subject.
We can certainly, one that comes to head, I couldn't find it last night. Rabbinical Seminary of America, RSA, which is a variance that the board granted, that I actually represented about 12 years ago in Kew Gardens, similar type of facility. But the rabbi, I'm sure, has a list in his head that they can tell you. The calendar number of the application that I just referred to is 33-05BZ. And I tell you which whereas it is, but it's buried in the whereases. Now, I know the board had questions yesterday about the size of the building. It's bigger than it's allowed to be, obviously. That's why we're here. We're proposing a total height. I believe our total height is 58 feet, and you're allowed in the district 35 feet. And I spoke to Louis Garfinkel last night, and I said, Louis, I'm looking at your floor-to-ceiling heights. They're concerned about the heights. Is there anything you do on some of the floor-to-ceiling heights? And Louis said, yeah, I could play with a couple of the floor-to-ceiling heights. and we can take off some feet and try and give the board more comfort. But I knew that no matter what Louis told me, I wasn't going to give you the answer that I think the board was asking for, is why can't we make it 20 feet shorter? So instead, what I did was I went onto Google Earth, or Bing Maps as it would be, and I took a closer look at Avenue N, because throughout my application, I've been pointing to the board across the street, diagonally catty corner across the street from us, is a 7-story building at 1388 East 15th Street, right across, diagonally straight across the street from us. It's a pre-61 multiple dwelling. But I realized that I never went much further than that. I always used that as the basis of why this building fit within the character. And what I saw last night, the pattern that I saw developing, was that along Avenue N, which you could see, up and down Avenue N in both directions, even on the other side of the train trestle from us, are 7-story buildings that are on the corner. So Avenue N really has this quite different character than other avenues do in this area, where they're historically marked on the corners with 7-story buildings. I even missed one at the corner of East 13th Street. I didn't even mark that. But I believe it's about 8 or 9 different 6 or 7-story buildings, all pre-war. Everything that's on Avenue N between us and up to East 12th Street, but not Coney Island, are all within the same zoning district. And I'll distinguish that in our next submission. They're all within the R5B zoning district. Coney Island Avenue, you're into an R7 district. And to the right of us, on the other side of the train trestle, to the right of this box here, those buildings that you're looking at there, those are also in an R7 district. That was obviously mapped since 1961. But the majority of the buildings, about 6 or 7 of them, are on Avenue N, on the corner, just like us, and they stand substantially taller than all of the 2-family homes around us. I give you that as a point of reference so that the building, you could see that our building is not so out of character with these buildings. Plus, we're here under the guidance of religious spaces, and we're hoping that the religious use trumps the day here, and saves the day, so to speak, and that you're understanding and compassionate to the fact that we are trying to do something that is protected religious freedom. And
Religious use or it's school use?
both. It's religious-based educational use. I actually get the benefit of
But
both.
One is oriented towards prayer, and the other one is oriented towards education.
Both. You can't separate them. It's religious-based education. They're studying to become rabbis. So everything that they're doing, whereas when I was in college, I was studying consumer economics and housing, which is where we are here now. That's not even on their curriculum, I don't think. I don't think they have anything related to consumer. Not yet. The rabbi, he'll be here for the 5th. That'll be for the. That'll be here for the 5th and 6th floors. He'll come back for that in a few years, but he's not up to that yet. That's essentially the essence of the application. I mean, I know you had a lot of questions, but there's not really that much to it. We're asking for the ability to house 64 students in 10 dormitory rooms. That's the request for the dormitory rooms. Half of the students do live in Brooklyn and New York City area. The other 50% of the students, 90, are not from the Brooklyn, New York City area. They're either from other parts of New York State, other states within the United States of America, or other countries. And also, some of the students, and one of whom's here today, are married with children, because the age range of the students, it's postgraduate, it's college level and postgraduate. So you're at 18 to 30, and obviously we're in a very religious-based section of Brooklyn where the young people tend to marry at an earlier age than people who aren't so religious. So obviously by age 19, 20, 21, 22, they're starting to get married. We're not asking for housing for families. We're not looking to bring in the students with their wives or with their children or anything like that. But we are trying to capture those students, A, so that we could attract more students from out of the country and from other parts of the country, and also so that the students that live nearby can immerse themselves within the religious culture. If you have more questions, I'd be happy to answer, or otherwise give the rabbi a chance to speak.
Okay, well, it depends on who you want to have answer the question.
Well.
So, a lot of this has to do with how the number of in-building students is arrived at. So, if they are living in, because the way I understand it right now, based on the information you provided, is they're currently in
Well, I gave you 3 reasons.
It's expensive and their
It's
parents
better for
are
their study.
nervous about them
Right.
because they are
That was-
actually animal house-like.
That's, I didn't state that, but I saw that was the implication. And I didn't mean to imply that.
It shouldn't be animal house-like, it makes your parents upset.
Yeah, right. It's quite the opposite here. And that wasn't, I saw that was the implication that was derived from my statement. But what it is it's primarily driven by the need to have students immersed in the religious-based experience, and a religious educational experience and immersed in it. That's much like a seminary, so very, 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 very much for that basis. But what we were trying to denote with the parents was simply a fact of life, that anybody walking on the streets of Brooklyn at 11:30 at night is a target, and 5-6 blocks at 11:30 at night, whether you're a male or a female in Brooklyn on the streets of New York City at 11:30. I just saw an article yesterday about a young woman that was raped in the back of a taxi cab, a green cab. It's in today's paper today. So we live in a city, and we live in a city where there's unpredictable people. So what we were trying to communicate simply is that what you have here with these students, like I said, they're not the students that are hardened by reading the New York Post every day and watching Fox News. These are the students that are immersed in studies. And the concern of a parent sending a student from another part of the country into Brooklyn and telling them that your apartment's 5 or 6 blocks away and you should walk home at 11:30 at night is a real concern. And that's all we're trying to, but it's not the main focus of what we're doing. It's the religious-based reason.
Because as I described yesterday, so a few of us have been through other kinds of rigorous education, like I think almost everybody, where we work easily in the library till way after midnight regularly, or in the studio till way after midnight regularly. Students continue to do that at all of those institutions, and we live in whatever distance from our institutions, so as rigorous as you want, right? Why is it more necessary in this situation to live in the building? I'm not even talking about on campus, because 5 blocks away would be the equivalent of, say, going to Columbia University, where you live on university housing, but your school is at one end of the campus and you walk to the other end, and it's easy 5 blocks off.
Right, but that's not the model within the Jewish or within the theological world. That may be the model in the secular world, but it's certainly by no
What
stretch.
isn't the model?
The model is not to have students outside of the facility. They keep the students close within the religious world, and that's the way that they do it. Also, in addition, there are many.
Not general theological or campuses.
Right, but you're in a campus. Here, I'd be hard pressed to call Midwood a campus. It's a bit of a difference.
But you're saying that, according to that, every yeshiva would have on-campus classes.
Every yeshivas that provide college level and postgraduate level educational, sure, they would love to have it. And that's,
Well,
why don't we
that's
have the
what
rabbi,
they have.
why don't we have the rabbi speak? Because I think he
Okay.
could answer this at a much better case than I can.
Well, no, but and one other point is, there was a statement about some students come from other countries.
Yes.
I can understand you arrive from someplace, you don't know anything, your mother is all nervous that you're going to New York in the first place. Maybe those students are the ones that need to stay very close to their point of study, but I don't understand the ones who actually live in the neighborhood.
The rabbi will explain it, and we'll be sure to give you references to numerous other religious-based institutions that offer similar types of facilities, both in New York City as well as around the country and around the world.
In New York City, in an urban context.
We'd be happy to. There are a number of them, and then the rabbi, I'm sure, will give you some right now. Rabbi.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. I appreciate being afforded the opportunity to speak today.
State your name for the record, Rabbi.
Excuse me?
Please state your full name for the record.
My name is Rabbi Joffin. I am the Dean of Central Yeshiva Beth Joseph, the applicant. And I apologize in advance for my speech being halting. I had a stroke a few years ago, but I hope that the passion behind my plea will compensate for any deficit. We are here to apply for a variance for a school. I head the school. I am the 4th generation. My great-grandfather started the school in White Russia, which is now Poland, in 1895. My son, Rabbi Moshe Jaffin, will be the 5th generation. And hopefully his son will be the 6th generation, God willing. The school is my life. And I'm very pleased with the progress we've undertaken and we've seen in these past 10 years. My father ran the school before me. I took over 10 years ago. I moved the school to Flatbush. We started with 40 students and we're up to 160 students. The work hasn't been easy, but it's been very rewarding. The community has responded and shown an outpouring of belief in us and appreciation for what we do. We're a multi-functional use building. We serve as a synagogue, very active, services 3 times a day, and holidays and Saturday. A full synagogue with full services, 150 congregants on every Saturday service. Besides that, we're an educational institution. When the synagogue is not in use, from 7:30 in the morning when prayers begin, people start floating at 7:30 prayers begin till 11:30 when prayers end, the building is in use. Whether an hour a day in prayer, an hour and a half, the rest of the day is an educational institution. We have 3 programs. One is an undergraduate standard, which culminates in a BA. The second is a graduate program. The undergraduate is a 4-year full graduate program. The second one is a graduate program that takes about 5 or 6 years. At that point, the student is about 26, 27. And that culminates with 3 years of an ordination program. They enter at 18, they leave at 30 fully ordained rabbis. Hopefully with sterling character and great knowledge. To get that young man from an 18-year-old teenager to a rabbi is a tremendous, arduous process. It requires constant and vigilant work on the pedagogical staff. We watch them, we nurture them, we mentor them, and we create an atmosphere where in our age, our day, our time, I grew up in the 60s, and that was considered very turbulent times, but it's nothing like we have today. Today, the problems that children face, that teenagers face, are existential problems, life-threatening problems, drugs and diseases, really major problems. To get a young man in our world to stick through this vigorous training of 12 years of study and to choose to end up to pass the requirements and to have the motivation to be a rabbi, tremendous amount of work, which each one is the work that puts in makes them so precious, and the needs are so varied and so multifaceted that it requires constant vigilance. And that is why, to make this work, we keep them all together and we mentor them and they stay together and they all share in a dream. The dream is to rebuild, to make education, that they should get an education, they can go out and serve the community. The Jewish community has a special need for rabbis after the Holocaust to really rebuild what we had before. In terms of my institution, we had once 10,000 students. So there's a need, a special, I feel, a burden to seek to once again repopulate this lost population by making rabbis and making rabbis of caliber. I'm digressing a little bit. That's the passion speaking. But let's get back to the issues. The issues we came here for variance. The variance, we have 2 sets of students, single students and married students. Most of the undergraduate is single, most of the graduate students are married. The married students live in the neighborhood. I don't know if you know much, I don't know how familiar you are with the neighborhood, but Midwood is a very affluent neighborhood. And anytime it's affluent, the houses are expensive. And young people do not live in Midwood, because housing is very expensive. When I moved in, you rarely saw a baby carriage. You really saw a young couple. What we did by opening an institution, we brought young people to the neighborhood. Neighbors stopped me and say, Rabbi Jaffin, thank you for, we're an elderly senior citizen community. You brought life and vigor to the community. They're baby carriages, they're young people. They move into communities, and since they can't afford houses, they're buying houses, they rent in the apartment buildings, and they can only stay till the family grows. Obviously, when they get to about 30, they move on. But for now, we brought 50 or 60 families to the Flatbush community. This community, we invigorated an old community with young blood. And the present people in the community are very appreciative. They love seeing baby carriages. They love seeing young people with life and vigor and building towards the future. They join us in our synagogue and they support our school. But because we have these students, graduate school and undergraduate, we need classrooms. As it is now, when Rabbi Drillman speaks, Rabbi Neckwitz can't want to teach. Rabbi Neckwitz can't teach. There's not enough room. When I teach, someone else can't teach. When I want to talk to a boy, and these boys all need counseling, there's one office. You have 180 students, 150 students, one office. They line up to get counseling. First of all, anyone will tell you, counseling is a very private process. It doesn't work. I need space. I need to talk to the boys. The pedagogical staff needs classrooms and place to talk to the boys. The boys need places that they can feel their privacy is respected. These are not luxuries we're asking for. It's necessary for any proper function. You can't have 180 students, people with marital problems and with medical problems that need talk and need space to live. We're not asking for anything but the barest bones to be a functioning institution.
How many undergraduates are there?
We have about evenly divided, I think a little more. The difference between because the undergraduate was only 4 years, and the other program is 8 more years if that. So the graduate program is heavier. Leads more towards the graduate program. The other two are more than, I'd say about 40 in the undergraduate, 40%, 60% in the graduate ordination program. And I'd like to grow the school even more. I think we're doing a terrific job. And I'm going to ask you to permit, when the time comes, to the students to dress you. I think I have passion. I think I infuse that passion in the students, and they will tell you what it is that we offer them. Yes, specifically, we need, so that's a need that goes without explaining. Classroom space. Every school needs classrooms. We also need dorm space. As I told you, this is it's not like going to Columbia University. My wife is a professor at Columbia University. I know what goes on in Columbia University. It's nothing like that. She teaches 12 hours a week. The kids go to school 12 hours a week, and that's a full-time job. Our students, a full-time professor teaches 12 hours a week. My mother was a professor. My wife is a professor. My daughter's a professor. Full-time professors, not like a lawyer. Not full-time teachers, 12 hours a week. My students teach 50 hours, study 50 hours a week. My staff teach 60 hours a week. It's a different environment. They don't go home. You say, in Columbia, they live on the west side. They go to a class. They go to their apartment. It's not like that. They're in the study hall all the time. They take a few hours of a break. Not the time for them to walk out. Especially in climate weather. I see it every day. They get out at 11:30. If the whole day work, they know they're getting up 7 o'clock again. Not walking them to class 11 o'clock in Columbia on Morningside Heights. They're getting up 7 o'clock. They're not walking out. If there's a dorm, they can go up to the rooms and get their few hours of sleep and have a coffee in the dorm and eat and have a life. The dispersed among, again, also you say there's apartments. Let me tell you about these apartments. I'm ashamed to say there are no apartments in Middle. What there is basements. Basements which are accommodations that I'm going to say it in front of my students, they know. I have a son who's an undergraduate student. His mother doesn't let him stay in the basement. She says it's not fit for a human being. She wants a real dormitory. He stays at home. It's not, the facilities you're talking about are not like the facilities on Morningside, where Columbia has apartments and they move in and they have beautiful apartments and all that. What's available is basements that are not fit for human habitation. It doesn't exist. If you want a dormitory, you need to have a dormitory in the school. There are two other schools. We are not the only school in Flatbush. There are two big schools. One is called Chaim Berlin, which is a big school on Coney Island Avenue, has a dormitory for 200 students. Beautiful. Then there's another one, Mir Yeshiva, on Kings Highway and Ocean Parkway. There's a dormitory of 150 students. What? And a third one, and Tortamina, on Foster and Ocean Parkway. Also a dormitory of over 100 students. Anyone who has my type of institution, a college age plus, requires the dormitories, and they all realize that we don't have facilities in Flatbush like they have in Columbia. Columbia owns the apartments, they don't have that. All there is basements. There's nothing there for them. There's nothing there. If I want to run and build what I want, and give the children, the students, an opportunity to grow pedagogically, grow socially, and feel good about themselves, I have to give an environment that's conducive to this. And that requires the dormitory. I can tell you this, that in the 8 years, in the 10 years, the population has tripled. We started with 40, quadrupled, we started with 40 up to 160. I'd like it to grow more. But in order for us to reach the next level and to do justice to the students we presently have, what I'm asking for is the bare minimum. And I think I know there was a community meeting and not one person in the community voiced any objection. They all thought we were a wonderful neighbor, considerate and thoughtful and helpful to the community and an asset to the community. And they all appreciated that young people came to this neighborhood and invigorated the people. They like seeing baby carriage. What should I tell?
Question, with the dormitory that you have where there's gonna be a lot of people living in this building, how are they going to be kind of supervised? Is there gonna be a faculty member who lives on site?
I live 2 blocks away.
So you have these 64 students,
Yeah, we have
the
two.
parents are worried
No,
about
we have two.
not being
I have
supervised.
two graduate students live with them. 2 or 3 graduate students live with them, with undergraduates.
So it's sort of
Like a house leader,
like in
yes,
a dorm
yes.
or
And I live 3 blocks away. Rabbi Drillman lives 3 blocks away. Rabbi Drillman's wife and my wife, both highly educated, brilliant women, cook for the boys Friday night. We have 20 boys each eating our home because we want to inculcate in the boys a sense of community. We want to develop a sense. It's very hands-on. The boys feel very close to us. They share their problems. And that comes from the time we give of ourselves to make this relationship possible.
So with these 2 grad students, so far I only see dorm rooms, I hope you guys are ready for this, 7 people sleeping together in a room. So then those 2 graduate students sleep in one of those rooms of the 7, or
Tell you
there's
the
a
truth,
separate, because there's no program
I haven't
design.
worked out the details. But
Well, you kinda need to work out the
one thing I
details,
can
that's
tell
what
you,
we're here for.
that if the boys are not happy, I will accommodate them. What usually happens is one space that the dorm leaders are given a better room and they stay there, and the younger students have the rooms like in any dorm. I imagine they will get a bigger dorm for 5, or there'll be 3, and they'll get the 3 senior people, a smaller room, They'll get a small one in the corner. Otherwise, they won't take the job. These are very, very strong-willed, and they give me a run for the money.
Another question, how about feeding them?
At the moment, the food is catered, except for Shabbos, which our wives cook.
So how will this work when you have so many people living there? That's a lot of
Again,
meals.
if we will either then have a cook or we'll continue catering, depending what works. It's trial and error, but I'd like to switch to cook.
So that warming kitchen.
Well, it could be expanded. It could be expanded. Could be.
Question, how did you determine how many students should dorm? Was it determined based on sort of what you have now, the amount of students you have now, and what you perceive as sort of your critical amount that you need to have in this environment? Or was it a space consideration? How did you determine?
Let me explain to you.
the number?
The question is, anyone who doesn't live in Brooklyn or doesn't live in Flatbush has to dorm, because we don't drive in the Sabbath, so everything has to be walking distance. We've dealt with Orthodox people for long enough. Anything to do with the synagogue and Orthodox has to be walking distance. So the only question is, so everybody not in walking distance has to dorm. The question is, how do we determine those that live in Flatbush, whether they dorm or they don't? I prefer, a boy comes, I say, I prefer that you dorm. And even if you don't dorm, you have to be here from 7:30 in the morning to 11:30 at night. I prefer that way. Pedagogically, I think it's better if the boys dorm. But boys are independent. Whoever has teenage boys, they know that. And they choose, and sometimes their parents have what to say. I'd say it's about 60-40 mix. 60% choose to dorm, 40% choose to live at home. But I suggest that they all don't.
But I thought you said 40% of the students are undergraduates and they're the ones who are not married.
Right.
So that doesn't.
No, but
work.
of those that could
Of
dorm,
40%,
60% would dorm, and 40% do not. And I prefer, I tell them when they register, I interview every student. I ask them, do you plan on dorming? And they say, well, I like it at home. I tell them, I understand you like it at home, but I believe pedagogically and for your own good, and besides, part of maturation, of growing up, what we do is we take young men and we watch them grow, is moving out of mommy's house. Sometimes they buy my spiel and sometimes they don't.
Moms have a big pull.
Mom, it's also the cooking is better at home. What should I tell you?
So, just doing your math, 40% of the 180 are undergrad.
Right.
That's 72 students.
Right.
60% of them choose to dorm.
Right.
That's 42 students.
Right.
You're asking for sleeping accommodations.
We're talking about
50. Right, so, in the interest, so that's one of the reasons we're asking this question,
okay, let me explain
right?
to you. You're talking about when you build a building, you build with the hope not to build a building, you build you build growth into any new project. What we are building and asking for is we hope the school will grow by a modest number. To get up to 60, or out of 42 to 60 is a very modest growth. I hope to live a long time. But even in what I reasonably, I expect the next 10 years to see at least 20 more students. Otherwise, I haven't done my job.
So then,
Otherwise, my son will take over and say, Daddy, it's time to step aside.
so then you've been planning the planning of the buildings based on 180 students. You really need to plan this for 200 students.
I think
right?
I'll tell you what, I plan to cut down on the graduate school and to make the undergraduate division bigger. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
and Madam Chair, Eric Palatnik, and I see your questions. You know, it's always, in past boards, it's always been a problem. How do you posit the application? Because the numbers grow, and that's, we want the numbers to grow. So, for example, when we first started making this application, the rabbi had, I think, 120 students. Now he's got 150 students, just in the course of the past year. So it does change over time. And what he's trying to express to you is that the dormitory room has really been set up that mostly will be occupied from day one. Not all of the graduate students are married. Some of them are married, not all of them are married. And it's his desire to have everybody on site. So the numbers, I see where you're going with the 40% of this, and you're off by eight students or 12 students. I mean, bear in mind the rabbi is not he's not here every day with the board. And he's not here to give you scientific certainty. But what he's expressing to you, I think, quite clearly, is that the students should be on site, and they should be on site all the time. And this is not something that's new to him. It's something that's ingrained in the Orthodox community in Brooklyn. And of those facilities that have the ability and have the wherewithal to do it, they try to include the dormitory space. And that's all he's trying to express.
So your statement, we're basing all the questions on what it says in the statement of findings and facts,
Right.
right? So, because now you have the benefit of the rabbi's input, because we really need to have different support for why we need to house students in the building, I say on campus for lack of a better term, because right now the explanation that's given in the statement is simply that the students are spending money to rent apartments near the yeshiva. I mean, everything costs money. And, that the parents want their children closely supervised. That's not enough of a pedagogical reason. On the other hand.
You skipped number 1. I'm reading the
Which is
paragraph.
number 1?
Dormitory space, page 8.
Let's hear
10
it.
dormitory rooms accommodating 64 students are proposed because 1, the yeshiva's educational programs requires that students spend as much time as possible on the premises and study.
As
That's
much
the
time
main
as-
reason.
But they're already spending as much time as possible.
Oh,
It starts
they're-
at 7 and ends at 11:30.
they're
That's as
not.
much
It's
time
a
as
much-
possible.
what-
That's not the same thing as sleeping there.
It's-
Wait,
go on.
I'm trying to help you.
I see that.
So the rabbi explains how the pedagogical approach is about community, it's about everyone working together. I imagine that after you spend, I can't even do the math on how many hours that is in school, that you start to talk to each other, there's debating going on, all that stuff, that probably even goes on, in the dining room when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, because most people this age don't go to sleep at normal hours, right? So that's part of the
That's where you're
pedagogical
going.
process. He gave you all that. Now write it up.
Got it.
Okay, so we had a bunch of other questions, though, that so one was to look at a lesser variance, because that's what we have to look at. That might not require as many waivers. So, for example, if we just said that you only have to accommodate 43 students, what would that look like? Would that have an impact on the scope of the waiver? I'm not sure it would, because I don't know how many students you have on each floor, but I don't know that that would help. But for example, there was discussion about currently being housing of 40-something students. Would reducing the size of the building eliminate significantly? That's the way it was studied, right?
Okay. I believe we've given you, I'm just looking for the fine law.
You had a lesser variance where it wasn't about the dorms, it was instead about fewer classrooms, which doesn't, I mean, you only have full classrooms for a lot of students on the press that they can use.
Right, when
So-
we kept the same number of dormitory rooms, but either way, it's 6 of 1. Either we're losing the dormitory rooms or we're losing the classroom.
Since the pedagogy is really what this is about, and so pedagogy you can support quite easily by planning your schedule of classroom use and space use and all that. But the dorms seem to be what's the manageable place. So if the lesser variance looked at that, and you just use, for example, based on percentages for the sleeping spaces, I don't know actually what
Louis Garfinkel. I figured this would be a good time to introduce Louis Garfinkel, the project architect.
But so just to continue, then there were some calculations that you did for the parking. So just to correct this, the original parking calculations for the building is based on a synagogue, where there was one parking space on the C of O required. So you can't, unless you're eliminating the synagogue, which you're not, you can't eliminate that one parking space. So the waiver is actually 16 spaces, not 18. We need to clarify what the distance is to public transportation, because you have 60-something people living in there. I'm hoping that at least on someday they won't allow you parking. So they have to get from A to B, how do they get there? Because you don't have parking and you don't have bicycles.
And we'll clarify, we'll put that in our statement, but the M train is 2/10 of a mile away in the queues.
Okay, so show that on a map. Bike parking. For that. And the social functions that were described in the statement of facts, if you could clarify that, you mentioned a little bit about post-services, there's events. I assume there might be other kinds of events, or just there's only one. So the question is who attends these and how do they arrive to the place? Because again, the question is about parking, and how many people attend that. Also the faculty, where do they come from? Do they live in the neighborhood, are they walking distance, or are they driving? Do they drive? How does where they park? Then the seeker analysis actually needs to really be done. It actually makes a statement that there's no enlargement to the existing structure. So the seeker completely has to be done, and you have to, the areas that are potentially impacted by this proposal need to be analyzed.
We'll address that.
And then, we had, Commissioner Henderson had asked about the building it currently is not compliant. It looks like it's kind of a 1980s postmodern or something.
It was built under R6 zoning. They changed the
Ah.
zoning in 2006 to R4.
Okay, so explain that, because it's not, it's a legal non-compliant condition based on prior zoning.
Well, I did, I think it'll be answered now that I'm going to go back and take a look at, the sizes of the rooms and why, putting the furniture, we can understand what the sizes were, because my concern was, especially in your as-of-right scenario and even in your Western variance scenario, you don't really show us why some of these spaces wouldn't work, now that you've got a there may be the opportunity to maybe cut back on that top floor a little bit, step that back, I don't know.
That's the lesser area study that
Exactly. So once you kind of lock in the kind of square footage you're really looking at, not just kind of, well, we've got this space and now we're just going to put even spaces and this will become dorms. Really take a look at it, drill down and see how much that space you really need per student in each dorm room. Tighten it up and then see if you've got, a little wiggle room to be able to have a lesser variance. You may not need that space. You also may want to take a look at it and see if you're utilizing what you have here efficiently and see if it might be a little wastage. So take a look at that and see if you can tighten up the lesser variance a little bit.
Yeah, it just seemed a little odd to us that, for instance, there's no proposal at all to reconfigure the existing floors. And since you're looking at trying to make the school more efficient, it seems to me you might want to reconfigure existing conditions to fulfill programmatic requirements. I don't know how that would be done, but it's rare that we see a school that's going through a whole new look and they don't reconfigure any of the existing
Well,
spaces.
Well, let me just say, the building was built with a foundation capable of, I don't know if it's capable of holding these floors, but the intent was to keep the first two floors as is. We still may have to do something on the foundation.
I don't mean configuring the bulk, I
But-
mean the interior layouts.
Right, but
It may help you to go through that exercise, because you may see that with, adding a couple of floors, that you have the opportunity to now look at these floors differently and how spaces relate to each other. And you may come up with, no, it actually really is better if we reorganize some of the first and second floors, and then you might not need so much at the top.
I could see possibly renovating the first two floors, like you're saying, there's gonna be columns coming through, or, electric, but the synagogue can't get smaller, and the social hall can't get smaller, so, and just talk
No,
about a
but
kitchen,
They're sitting in the middle of a space, which typically is not necessarily the most efficient, right? So you lose the ability to have like central cores for things that you take up less space. So I think, you kind of have to put on your architect designer hat, which you do quite well, and put a little work into it.
And I think, Eric Blanick, I think if we show you, I think what you suggested earlier with the furniture layout and the layouts of the rooms, I think that'll help clarify a lot. I think part of the problem I think that we're having communicating to you is you're seeing this big wide open space, and I know Louis in his head is thinking about how the space lays out when it's used for prayer and how much space he needs for all the congregants to come and pray. And I can see him shaking his head while I'm talking, so I'm reading his mind pretty well. But he's not showing that to you. Right, it's not on the plan. And I think that'll help.
I can't see into his brain. I'd love to, but I can't
Right.
do that.
I'm with you.
And do you enter this building in the basement level?
It's mid-level between the basement and the first floor.
So how is this handicap accessible, this building?
There should be. There's an elevator on the right side.
Yeah, how do you get there?
There's a side, you see the side door on the 10-foot side yard?
Where, on the first floor level?
That's on the basement plan.
No.
That's where it's drawn.
I see an elevator, but I don't see how, oh, you have to go, how do you get there?
You go in the side yard.
Back door on East 15th Street.
Side
Is that
yard.
illegal?
At the time, that's what the approved plans had. Primary entrance is what you're,
Second class citizen. No, but seriously, you have to go to the building department, how do you get that?
well, you can get a waiver from the mayor's office at times, especially it's an existing building, and that's how,
Wait, was it, when was this built again?
what was it, about 03?
How was it legal in 2003? It wasn't legal in 2003. What?
Maybe earlier.
So I don't know. That's a building code question. Not sure that it was allowed when it was built, unless there was a waiver from the mayor's office. So, okay, so you walk down on the alley, come in the back way, and go to the elevator.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning when the handicap laws, when they started enforcing that, they did not always, I remember the primary ADA, the primary entrance was not, I remember getting objections, 10 years later about primary entrances. So, no? Okay.
Because you're-
Maybe in the law, I'm not saying.
Well, but in 2000, like 2000 something, it was well established that it has to be a primary entrance in the 80s.
The CFO was from 1995.
1995? Okay, so that's it. So it could have been filed in 93,
I don't know, so you need to go quickly check because, with DOB,
Okay.
because that's gonna affect your layout, and it actually might be moved.
Yeah, I might make a modification, because the elevator's gonna be brand new anyway, so.
Oh, it does? So
I'm sure, yeah.
You're talking to one.
Yeah, it's true, you're like one of the first customers. Okay, what was the other?
Well, I just was
Yeah.
concerned about the way the building is going to tower over the adjacent residential buildings, like over twice as tall.
Yes, and
And especially the one on Avenue N has no, you're building right on your property line. You have no side yard, no setback.
the Rabbi has a nice relationship with the family that owns that building. I know that she's ill. Rabbi, you have to speak into the microphone. You have to speak into the mic. Oh, stay. They're letting you, giving you special dispensation.
The family that owns the building has a son-in-law who studied by my father and is now a senior rabbi. So they're very fond of the yeshiva. In fact, they let us use their driveway for students to park. They're very, very accommodating. We have a very, very good relationship. And as evidenced by the fact that they did not object when we had the community hearing. They came and they supported our application. Said, on one hand, we're next to a train, doesn't bother anybody. Also, across the street, there's a big apartment building. It doesn't change the nature of the neighborhood.
Well, it's gonna be a very large addition.
The apartment
It's
house is,
over
the
twice of
the
what
apartment
it's
house
about.
is 4 times what we're building. 4 times.
Eric Palatnik, I hear your concern. It is going to be bigger, and Louis Garfinkel is going to look at ways to maybe reduce it, some of the floor-to-ceiling heights. The point, go on.
Speaking of the train, you haven't done any noise readings. I mean, that's an elevated train approximately 50 feet away from the school,
Right,
correct?
yes.
And the EAS, that goes back to the EAS, which we consider you on.
All right. We prefer not to do vibration testing, noise testing on it, only
Why?
because, well, it's quite costly to do it, and the rabbi's been there for very many years.
Nobody's
No.
slept there.
So for the sleeping
Now it's
component.
housing.
So if you'd like to see some noise testing, is that what I'm
I
hearing?
think it's only logical.
We're-
And certainly attenuation is going to be designed.
Well, yes, the attenuation is easy. We could have the double glazed windows, the non-operable windows, which we're happy to do, but I understand what you're asking about for the noise testing.
And then, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but if we were talking about reducing somewhat the dormitory count, not the lesser variance version, but somewhat reducing the count, you might be able to pull some of the functions that are along the property line that are not providing the required yard. You might be able to pull them back a bit, sort of cluster them into one of the that's down there.
To provide sort of, you're envisioning almost a setback up at the
Yeah.
second, third, or fourth floors a little bit? We'll take a look at that and we'll see.
Maybe it doesn't work at the second, because that's a pedagogical floor, but it would at the third and the fourth.
And in your document, can you cite to references that are used for calculating the amount of space that you're assuming for each person? Like
Yeah,
in
the per
dorm
square
room?
foot, yes.
Yeah,
Dorm rooms and class.
yes,
Do you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing else. I don't want to deprive any of the students a chance to speak, but I don't want to take up your calendar either. So it's enough to acknowledge that they all came here, and I think the rabbi spoke very well on their behalf.
How many want to live on campus? Better say yes, all.
That was only 10.
I know. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Um,
There's still a lot of work for us to do. If we could have approximately 2 months to make the submission, that'll give us time to do the testing and Mr. Garfinkel to prepare the plans.
Okay, so 2 months takes us to the end for a submission at the end of March.
That would be great.
Okay, so a submission March 31st, then, you want to do that?
That's great, and I'm wondering when Pesach is. I can't do it. This is not the group to schedule a hearing during Pesach. When is Passover? Passover is April 4th, so we could have the hearing after Passover.
Is it okay, though?
I can make the submission by March 31st, and then, yeah, we could have
And
this.
there's no preparation in between, so the 14th
Yeah.
of April.
Is the 14th of April a holiday? You guys, could you show up on the 14th? Yeah, I don't need you, I mean the rabbi. He's never on break. The 14th is okay, Rabbi? It's not a holiday? 14th of April? Okay, so April 14th would be great, thank you. So we just have,
Submission on the 31st.
thank you very much.
Item number 2, 30113BZ, 506-510 Brook Avenue, the Bronx.
This is one we wanted, they were going to adjourn.
Postpone?
To, yeah, to March 3rd.
Item number 3, 30913BZ, 965 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
Yeah, give it a moment. So you didn't bring that many people to this?
Would you like to speak for me?
I can recruit people. Good afternoon, Mayor Altman, from the Law Office of Mayor J. Altman. We did have somebody at your executive session yesterday. I apologize. The storm kept me away personally. I was snowed in until this morning. You're not kidding. I could skate on my driveway right now. In any event, we did hear your comments. And as far as the comment on the statement of facts, where I say that it's permitted pursuant to the section, I think that may be taken differently than it's intended. I don't intend it to say that you are required to give it. I intended to say that it is something you are permitted to give if you see it as appropriate.
Or it is permitted. to
Yes.
grant such a waiver
That's
pursuant
exactly
to
what was intended by that statement, that you're permitted to give it, not required to give it. So I just wanted to clarify that that was the intention behind that statement, and if it was taken differently, I do apologize for that. Regarding the question to add the sections in the statement of facts and findings, is that you just want the findings from 73-622, the actual wording from the section?
No, it wasn't that. It was that you're supposed to discuss each waiver request.
I-
Why the waiver request is consistent with the findings. So when you talk about the rear yard, you say, these are the findings, the rear yard reduction meets the findings in the following ways, or, and ditto
Well,
for
the
all the other.
section 73-622 just says you're permitted to request a 20-foot rear yard. There is no specific finding, and that's what I was trying to just
The
make sure.
findings are generally that it needs to be consistent with neighborhood character.
Okay, so you want me to address the neighborhood character on each of those
Yeah,
findings?
and affect,
Okay.
whatever it is, the development capabilities of the neighborhood, that kind of stuff.
Understood. I just wanted to clarify exactly what was being asked for.
Because this spoke a lot about floor area, but only,
Right, that was the one that had been inquired about on the notice of comments, which is why that was the one that was detailed out. There was no request on the notice of comments, but I'll be glad to provide that information. As far as a request for, I heard streetscape, but I'm sure what you're probably requesting is a photo montage.
photos.
Be glad to provide that, as well as a rear yard study.
And exterior dimensions on the plans to show
That-
what size.
We can do that. I know that's something that typically we've been told to keep all interior dimensions off of these
It's
plans.
not that you need them for the final, it's for us to understand the planning of the house. That way we can understand, I don't know if you're here for the earlier here in
No, I
where
was-
we
that's
talk
a-
about whether a house can be reduced with respect to the rear yard, we
So-
understand.
So perhaps if I submit an additional set without voiding out the regular set
Correct.
for discussion
For
purposes
information
only,
Yeah,
I can do that. That can certainly be done. I believe those were the only comments at yesterday's session.
Well, there were other comments within routine, the preparation of the application. So
Oh.
there was.
And they didn't get carried to me, and unfortunately, they're not posted on the VSA site yet.
Sorry, we had technical malfunction when the technical experts.
No problem, but that's why I had
Okay.
to rely on these notes solely. Unfortunately, I couldn't review it myself.
Okay, so, there's a streetscape drawing that actually is really good, I think it goes across a lot of houses on the street. But what it does is it shows that the house is really large compared to the neighbors. This is kind of a theme that, if you brought the height of the attic down
Right, as I said, we will do a rear yard study and we will do that.
And photos taken from the rear yard, so we stand.
Understood, well, that's part of the rear yard study, of course.
Yeah, right. And then, Commissioner Montanez made a comment.
That the original plans that you had given us in the original application, I felt fit in with the neighborhood character better and was actually similar in height to one of the other houses in the streetscape. It's about 2 feet lower in height than your current proposal, and it doesn't have that very large bulk at the top.
I believe the client actually made the decision that for the family, they did need an additional space, and that was why there was the addition of the space in the attic, but I will confirm that, I will speak with the client and the architect.
And so it's possible to get usable space, but, trim it down so it's not, doesn't look like it's over 8 feet.
Let me speak with the architect, I'll speak with the client, and I'll see what they can do.
Yeah, you've got 13 feet in the master bedroom from floor to ceiling. It's not counting that structure. So if you brought that down, it might achieve what you need in the attic space without bringing down the entire building.
We can look into that. Understood, I can certainly provide this idea to the architect, run it by him and see what I can get.
Any other comments? Are there any speakers on this item? Okay, so what are we? Next available hearing, I believe, is still March 3rd? Yes. So if you
What
want
about March 3rd, please?
So that's for a decision on February 17th.
17th, I believe, 18th, is it 17th holiday?
Okay, 18th. No, 16th is a holiday.
Oh, it's the 17th, it's the 17th.
17th.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
What's the hearing date, I'm sorry?
Submission on the 17th of February, hearing on March 3rd. Heavy. It's getting heavy.
Okay, so now, do you wanna call the PCE?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 6, 23214BZ, 946 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Good afternoon, Josh Rhinesmith of Warshall Burstein for the applicant. As you're aware, this is an application to permit a physical culture establishment within a small portion of a very large building located in East New York. It is essentially a building that I believe has over 400,000 square feet of floor area. The vast majority of the building is used for warehousing purposes. And in the rear of the building opposite from the Pennsylvania Avenue frontage is a large loading and parking area within the actual building structure. There's no open parking lot at the premises. And then the Pennsylvania Avenue frontage has commercial tenants, retail tenants. Immediately to our north is a furniture store, and to the south is a clothing retailer. The space above us on the second floor is all used for the warehousing purposes.
Above is warehouse.
Yeah, yes. And so there are no tenants that are sensitive to fitness center type use.
So you have a furniture store and a what?
And a clothing store.
So is any parking required for the PCA?
No, there's no parking required for the building. It's a pre-61 building. So there's no actual parking requirement. They do. It's parking category B1. But in terms of the building having a parking requirement, since it's pre-1961 floor area, there is no parking required for zoning.
So
Parking is provided.
Parking, there is parking provided within the building, yes.
Oh, okay, so.
But it's not required.
So how much parking is provided in the building?
That I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the.
So it's general parking for the retail use, right?
No, I think it's more associated with the warehousing uses.
Oh. So, but is it available to the users of the PCE?
No, we don't have any agreement that allows us to use it.
So it's not.
post-1961 floor area, a change of use would require the parking, but I believe, and I've had this issue at the Department of Buildings before, pre-1961 does not have a change of use provision for parking. It's different than loading bursts. Loading bursts definitely require, even if it's pre-61 floor area, a change in use for loading will trigger a loading requirement, but it is not the same language in any of the parking sections, whether it's 3621 or 4421.
Can you provide
Absolutely.
support for that?
I'll provide, yep,
Zoning analysis.
sure, I will provide the actual text.
Citations, yeah.
Sure.
What? So just a little something.
No problem.
And then, with respect to the noise issue, in the furniture store and clothing store, I'm just wondering, are they moving into like a plain vanilla box and they're not doing anything on it? Like, what are they doing with
Player
their
Fitness,
fitness machines and all
they're
that
doing
stuff?
the interior build out, but it is slab on grade, so it's not like on a floor where we have structural support for that floor that is then going to possibly reverberate throughout the other structural elements of the building. But I can provide, if I'm providing the analysis on the parking, I'll discuss that as well.
Okay, so yeah, because I'm assuming they're putting some of this stuff on overhead or.
Yes, all of them.
Marble inside the.
Sure.
Yeah, we have fire department information. I think we can close this assuming that the data you provided,
Absolutely.
otherwise we might have to reopen to discuss it.
Sure.
Data you provided is satisfactory. Are there any speakers on this item? So, okay, so the motion closed.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez? Aye. Commissioner Brown?
Aye. So, yeah, so if you could make a submission on February 17th for decision ideally in March 1st.
Absolutely.
March 1st.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5, 15414BZ, 6934 Fifth Avenue, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Frank St. Jacques for Sheldon LaBelle for the applicant. In response to comments made at yesterday's review session, we will ask the architect to show on the plans, and we'll expand the narrative to show how the proposed enlargement will comply with the aesthetic of the existing building. We have ordered Sanborn maps to show that the site is pre-1961, and we've also requested a survey from the architect at the commission's request. I am able to just give a brief overview of the application if the commission requires, or okay. Excellent.
Okay, so that's great. Are there any speakers on this item? So I think it's great that you'll provide the design. Great. And the Sanborn survey. So I think we can close, assuming everything's fine.
Excellent.
So for motion to close?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
For same submission schedule, right, February 17th for that material, is that okay?
That works.
For a decision on March 3rd.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Item number 4, 60-14BZ, 141-41, 72nd Avenue, Queens.
Good afternoon, Jay Goldstein for the applicant. I attended yesterday's review session, and I would like to start with some points of clarification, go through the comments one by one, and answer any questions that we may have. Just as a point of clarification, the congregation bought the building in 1992 and did their initial conversion to a synagogue. It was a existing two-story semi-attached house. They converted that building and kept the structure of that building and used it as a synagogue and classrooms. In 1997, they filed an Alt 1, which enlarged the synagogue per code and zoning at the time. Subsequent to that, in the year 2000 or about. There was additional construction which was done, which brought us out of compliance. That's what we're here for today. The history of this building is that it's, for the last 20 years, been operated as a synagogue. The spiritual leader is Rabbi Yigal Haimoff. Rabbi Haimoff is one of the spiritual leaders for the Bukharian community in Queens, which is right now one of the most populous, I guess, sects of Judaism or from that part of the area. Over the last number of years, this board has seen a number of new Bukharian and other synagogues in the area, and it's all of those synagogues and all of those rabbis are disciples, or the majority of them are disciples of Rabbi Haimoff and have gone on to stay in the community and start synagogues which continue on the traditions that he's instilled in his congregants. As it stands today, the building is still used as a synagogue, and it's also used as a nursery school. I know I referenced in my statement that it was at times used for elementary school, high school. It's solely used for nursery ages 2 to 6 or 7 at this point. The plan for the building is to continue on as a nursery for these age groups. Initially, we thought perhaps to grow the school within this building to allow for older grades, first and above, but given the neighborhood, the neighbors' comments, and given just the overall need for space and need for accommodation of the enrollment in our nursery, that's not feasible at this point. So when we get to that point, we'll probably have to look elsewhere for a building to accommodate an elementary school, God willing. At this point, I'd like to get into some of the questions that were raised yesterday, the comments that were made. The board asked the difference between the subcommittee and the full committee of the community board. At the a lot of issues and a lot of complaints and concerns that were raised by this board as well are the violations that are outstanding on this building. The subcommittee listened to the application and understood that in order to rectify a majority of those violations, we have to go through this variance process. Of the open violations, the majority of them are for contrary to plans and operating, the C of O was incomplete at the time. At this point, we have a C of O for the building for the prior structure, which was a synagogue and classrooms. We're here to legalize the portions that were built outside of that scope.
How do you have a C of O
There was
dated
this
when?
96.
So prior to the construction starting?
Well, it was subsequent to the first round of construction, but it doesn't incorporate these illegalities that we're here to correct. Correct.
But you pulled a permit in 97, 98 until the CO for 96, so that predates.
That's the above. As you pointed out yesterday, that application was never signed off.
Never signed off.
And it was resurrected by
Someone has just resurrected it, which.
When I asked that
Yes.
question, the response was it was a permitted application and DOB allowed them to resurrect it. I can try and get a better answer, but that was the architect, Jerry Caliendo, who's very familiar with the building department process.
So, I'm gonna ask you to provide, if this provide, this is my big question. Could you provide me with the proof drawings from the 97/98 permit? Then give me, have the architect either superimpose or graphically show me portions of the buildings that were built in 2000, not in accordance with the permit. And then how his plan is going to legalize what was done and make sure that there are no new non-compliances that he hasn't thought of or, uncovered and told us about.
Right. They went to look for the application when we started the process, and unfortunately the records couldn't be found. DOB tried to pull up the folder and can't find those plans.
Okay, so
We-
then they allowed you to resurrect a permit on there are no plans, and they can't,
I
this has to
understand.
go back and
I
make
understand.
sure that you can do this, because I have serious doubt that he's committed to take over this job when, he sets his PAA, right? He's taken over from the previous architect. I'm not sure that there's a job that he can actually take over.
Okay, that'll be addressed.
He would have had to have shown the building department the folder.
That's, again, an expediter. I will ask them to either check again. I will ask them to check again and then respond as to the process and,
He may have to basically start all over again. I am concerned he'll
That's fine.
start reading
Understood.
And to that point also, there are, you never went through, as is typical on a BSA application, all of the open violations and how they would be addressed. Because not all of the violations have to do with work without a permit. Some of them have to do with sprinklers and other things. The building is illegally operated as a school without sprinklers, or any kind of public facility without sprinklers. So the statement that I did see, being made somewhere in the record, that, I think it was during the public hearing of the community board, was every time the community board asked, why don't you legalize these existing conditions? And the response was, well, we can't until the BSA signs off on these illegal conditions. But that's not true. If the illegal conditions have to do with interior work, such as sprinklers, fire alarms, whatever else.
I
handicap
will-
accessibility, et cetera.
We put in actually an application for the fire alarm, and it's tied to the alt one, and we're putting in a sprinkler application as well, that'll be tied to the alt one. So going forward, all of the corrective measures will be made. I will, at the community board, this was how, this was what was explained to me, that certain work, because of the nature of the building and the nature of the application before you, in order to legalize or put in for sprinklers for the whole building, it may present an issue. I'll follow up with the architect. Whatever can be.
We're gonna have more discussion there.
Okay, whatever can be addressed, we'll endeavor to address it. So the procedure for, the use of the school, I believe I clarified that it's only used as a nursery for the school portion, and that the school, the synagogue itself has, it's a full-service synagogue where it has, 3 services in the morning, 6:30, 7, and 8 a.m., I believe, and then 1 in the afternoon, and then at 7:30 at night, 10:30 at night. The school itself operates from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with the option of a early morning and a late afternoon school program for children whose parents work. So, as you noted, there is a no standing sign in front of the building. The procedure that the school has in place for drop-off and dismissal is that the parents drive along that no parking area. We have one teacher on the street who meets the students at the car, brings the student to the teacher in the building, and the student goes to their class. So, of the 47 families that we have in the building, there are 27 that live in the immediate area. For the most part, those parents walk. Whether, depending on the weather, they may not walk, but for the most part, they walk. Of the remaining students, they arrive via carpool. So, the remaining students arrive with about 15 cars. So those students are accommodated by those teachers who protect their safety as they pull up to the school, and it's not 70 cars coming at the same time to drop off their students. For the early morning session, it begins at 8 o'clock in the morning. There are approximately 5 kids who take advantage of that program at this point. The procedure is similar, where there's a teacher waiting for them. The parents drive up, the parents in this instance will bring those students to the teacher, and those students will wait, play in the classrooms, and be monitored, supervised until the 9 a.m. when the school starts. The afternoon is a similar procedure, where the parents will come at dismissal at 5 o'clock, and the teacher will bring them out to the parents. The neighbors raised
But just a question with that.
Mhm.
So when the parents are dropping off the kids, don't they have to, they don't just open the door and the kid runs out, right? They have to actually get out of the car and bring the child to.
Well, there's a teacher on the street who picks
Right,
this.
the car doesn't just sit there idle, well, the parent doesn't sit in the car, has to take the child out of the car and bring it to the sidewalk, right?
Well, they park along the sidewalk of the school
But you said how many cars are on?
in intervals, 15 at max.
So, but what's the
So
length of the front?
I can give you a measurement, but there's no active driveways along that frontage. We have 50 feet on our lot, and then,
Yeah, 50 feet, so a car is 18 feet long, right? So that's 3 cars. That's tight parking, right? So what you're saying is 3 cars at a time can pull up, and then they're parked at the city, and then the parent gets out and walks to the other side and gets the child out of the carrier, the car seat, and brings over. And you're saying that somehow the 15 to, let's say, 13 other cars are
There's, in addition to our 50 feet of frontage, there's also additional space from from the corner of Main Street where there's parking to our building. The cars can line up there and park.
What if there's parking there?
There is parking at this hour. It's generally not that big of a concern.
Some of the complaints says that the school puts cones down.
That's for safety of the students. We put cones to prevent people from making the turn and to allow for parking of our
So like you're improperly planning parking spaces by putting in cones.
We can work on a procedure that works for the neighbors and works for the board, but that's the procedure that's been in place. If you have suggestions of a better approach for this,
I mean, you need to be working with an expert who's handling these problems, right? You're requesting the expansion of school, therefore lots of parking, lots of traffic issues where we have a lot of complaints about traffic. So there needs to be, we're not the one who made the suggestion, this is a traffic expert that made the suggestion, parking.
okay. I'll have that looked at. The neighbors have raised certain concerns regarding unsupervised children. I believe the concerns started when this was being operated as a school for high school students, where the students would play on the streets and play in the backyard. This is no longer a high school, so the concerns that are remaining regarding unsupervised children would, I'm not sure, but I would assume that it's regarding Saturdays and weekends when the congregation comes and it's not related to the school, but it's the parents of the congregation and their children. In response to the complaints and in response to the concerns, a number of weeks ago, Rabbi Heimoff instructed his congregants that if your child cannot stay within the synagogue and sit with you during the services, please do not bring them to the temple. Whether it's being adhered to, we're trying our best to control that situation and to make sure that those unsupervised children are not brought to the synagogue. Going forward, if this is approved and God willing the application goes forward, we will hire a youth director, and we propose to bring the youth director to the building so that the children who can't necessarily stay throughout the entirety of the services can go into one of the classrooms upstairs or play on the proposed rooftop upstairs and be supervised by a youth director, older member of the congregation, which is normal through other synagogues in the area. The next question was regarding early morning and afternoon programs. I think I addressed that unless you have other questions.
Well, actually, so, I mean, I know you're talking through this, but what we specifically asked for, which you need to make a decision because you have to establish a need for this, is you need to give us a schedule of how every room is used, what the occupancy of every room is during every hour of this working period, and it should show on plans how every room is used.
No problem.
And then that's existing. And then for the proposed, how every room will be used. You have to justify the need for what is expected.
No problem. For the most part, since this is a young population and the students are fairly young, generally they'll come to their class, they stay in their class the whole day. They have their breakfast, they have their lunch, and they have their playtime within that class. So I will put it on the plans.
Taken out, then maybe we're taken outside, that's.
Well, that will be that's part of the proposal, so I will give hours and operations and a schedule for that.
We need to know when you're typically taken outside, how long you're outside, where you go, where you park.
No problem.
How is that handled?
We'll address that, not a problem.
Is the worship space used during the week?
It is used,
Just on Saturday?
no, it's used during the week.
So it's used during the weekend, you've also decreased the size of that space. How do the sort of adults who would attend, how are they going with this now enlarged school? So how do they interact with kids that may not be their own? And how do those kids interact with the adult population?
Right, so-
utilizing their space?
So, as it stands right now, there are no classrooms on the ground floor and the synagogue is on the ground floor. The reason for the decrease in size of the synagogue is, as I mentioned previously, that the shift in the neighborhood has demanded additional synagogues that can accommodate more people, and it's pulled away somewhat from the congregation. However, the new synagogues that are opening are seeing a demand for the students to be brought to our school for the services that we're providing. We're one of the only schools in the area, if not the only school in the area, who specifically tailors their program to accommodate and to infuse in the students in a young age the Bukhari and the Sephardic customs of their ancestors.
So the programming is changing to become more of a school and less of a synagogue?
Yes, that's, the hours of operation that I listed for the synagogue remain the same. The number of people who come every Saturday, when we started the synagogue, was much larger than the number of people who come every Saturday now.
So, you stated 300 people come on the weekend. Is that still the same, or is that now?
It's over, I'll clarify that point in my statement, but it's 300 people utilize the building on Saturday. It's not 300 people coming for the first service in the morning. There are lectures that are given, there are afternoon services, there are morning services, so the foot traffic is about 300 people.
Okay, so that's what you have to break down.
I'll break it down for you.
The way we read it is
100%.
that it's all synagogue related and class.
Okay, I noticed it yesterday and I'll amend it in my statement.
Also, now that you are concentrating on the preschool and kindergarten grades, are you still anticipating a growth to 185 students, or has that assumption changed?
The assumption remains pretty consistent, but the original application anticipated providing first and second grade. We have for next year a population increase and a student population increase in the demand for 20 students. So the demand for the younger students has increased, so that we want to use this building solely for those younger students. It also means that the younger students may not be bused because more of them walk from the area. So
You heard my comment yesterday about the climate department.
Right. I will put that on the plans. I believe some of it was on the plans, but I'll spell it out here. I will also, on the plans, we'll address the location of the elevator. We'll look for an alternative instead of putting it on the side, to put it at the front of the building or somewhere within the building so that it accesses all floors directly through the main entrance. Okay. There was a comment regarding cellar versus basement versus, I'm not, I understand the confusion. The entire lowest floor is a basement and is counted towards our floor area.
And it says on the plans, in the calculations, that a cellar will be converted, and the basement will be converted to a cellar.
I think it should be the opposite. It was,
No, how can you convert a cellar to a basement?
I think the original calculation was that it was a cellar, and then they increased the floor area somewhere along, it increased the height rather, somewhere along the lines, and it should be calculated as a basement, and that's why we are calculating it as a basement.
None of that makes sense, so if you could
I
please look
will,
at the drawings,
100%.
statement of facts.
I think that goes back to the original drawings.
100%.
Because you started out with a two-story house.
Right, I think that's why
With
when
a
it was,
cellar.
I think when it was originally converted, it was a cellar, and when they did the build out in 97, it raised the height of that floor, and it created it into a basement instead of a cellar. I will clarify and confirm on the plans, and hopefully we'll find the older plans at the OP.
And are some of the foundations from the original
All those
homes?
foundations, from what I'm understanding, the
Are still
foundations
there?
are still there. And it
But
was
they've
done,
been lowered,
no, the ceiling height was raised.
ceiling height was raised.
Again, the architect has a representative here who's taking notes, and we'll confirm everything in our next submission.
Could you also talk about the side part of the understanding all, that this section around the existing house is an existing non-compliant side yard, therefore that's not non-compliant actually. But since we don't have the drawing.
We have a survey of the original two homes, and they're the same side yards.
No, but what I mean is, we don't have the drawings for the alteration. It's unclear really what they did with respect to that house. So we would-
100%,
They probably carefully disassembled it, so they could take advantage of the side yard, rather than
I
actually adding
will-
a frame house.
We'll address it. The point of that statement was simply that we're not widening the building. The proposal doesn't widen the building. We kept those side yards and the depth of those side yards, and we just went a straight line enlargement towards the back.
Well, you
I
just widen the building because it's basically almost like a property line.
There,
It's hardly, well, it's.
there's
or-
7 feet on, I think it's
I'm
believe
sorry,
it's-
yeah, on one side there is.
and
but I mean,
6.9 on the other. We
yeah,
have
but on the other side there's
6.9.
So it's like-
We're only asking on the side yards, the waiver at its, I think it's 1.5 feet, 1.5 feet. that we're asking for on the side yard. Again, all of that will be clarified in our plans, and we'll, again, I heard the comment regarding confirming the bulkheads and the height of the building. We'll do that as well to clarify in the plans. And we'll show area fencing, the fencing of the rooftop play area on the plans as well.
And then can you speak to the operation of that? How many children? What are the hours? Is it
So right now, we're not using it. The proposal would be to have a number of students use it, depending on the class size, depending on the schedule, 11 to 2 in the afternoon. Right now, it's not being used. It hasn't been used for some time, I'm informed. So therefore, because there's no second means of egress, and we don't want to put them on, we're proposing a second means to carry up everything. There is a second means in the building, just not for the roof. We'll also attach additional photos showing the street and the rear yard to show the conditions and show the surrounding areas. The community facility study that I submitted, it was put in as to show the character of the neighborhood in terms of that this community and this neighborhood, Kew Garden Hills as a whole, has welcomed and has accommodated larger community facility buildings, taller community facility buildings than is allowed in the R4 districts. The board has approved a number of variances for taller buildings, for bigger buildings, for community facility buildings in this area, and that's what the community facility study tried to explain, and I will amend it and work on it to bring that point further to the forefront.
But, and noting that those are on very large sites.
Well, the height of the building on most of them, but I will note it, and I think I did note the lot sizes in the FAR. The height of the buildings are still, for the most part, are close to a lot line, if not on a lot line, and are much higher than their neighbor, and that's something that we'll point out also. But it may result in a lower FAR because you're right, they do have larger lots.
Right, but also the bulk of the building on a much larger lot is sort of distributed on the mass of the lot as opposed to concentrated on a single tiny lot.
I'll amend the study to point that out. And we'll also, we took the comment of trying to reconfigure or relocate some of the worship space or some of the classrooms to the lower level to try and reduce the bulk. We will look at it, and depending on the size of the classrooms and how to approach it, and try and come up with an approach that can hopefully reduce the building in some measure.
And I think also the part that's quite confusing is by reducing the size of the synagogue to the point where there's really very few permanent room there, it almost sounds like you're encouraging the congregation to move elsewhere. So I'm wondering, isn't that something where you should just essentially call it a day and put that area to the school?
There's still a large contingent of people who come to hear lectures from Rabbi Heimoff or come to pray with Rabbi Heimoff, and the need for the synagogue in its location is still warranted. We're adjusting to the trend of the neighborhood where more people have gone to other synagogues. There's been an explosion of synagogues popping up all over this area, and more people have gone to it. So the need for such a large main sanctuary is no longer there. We're adjusting to that by creating more classrooms, which there is a need for.
What's the population of people who attend the synagogue?
I'll give you the breakdown in my daily schedule. Question was raised regarding food delivery for the school. The food delivery for the school is done at the front entrance, and it's catered by any number of the facilities along Main Street. Main Street's a very heavily restaurant-oriented and takeout food-oriented block, and that's how the food for the school is delivered. The neighbors raised concerns about the backyard where there was a delivery truck that goes and parks in the rear yard behind our building to make deliveries. That's done just to accommodate the small social hall in the basement. So it's only for Saturday events, like I mentioned in my statement, that with synagogues they do have social events that take place, bar mitzvahs, etc. And the food is delivered from one of the vendors in the area, and it's brought into the building and left in the warming kitchen that's in the cellar. I told the neighbors, and I intend to speak to the delivery van myself, because all requests from the employee of the store and the restaurant have gone on deaf ears, so I'll speak to I'll try and get in touch with the delivery man, but speak to the catering establishment as well, for the vendor.
What is the what is the use of that right-of-way?
There's a right-of-way it's a driveway it's a dead end where the neighbors on either side use it for parking for their houses.
Where's the entry, from Main Street?
No,
Or from
the
other
entry
end?
is from 140,
So you're the end.
right, we're at the
building.
end of the dead
You
end.
have somebody across the way
Correct,
at the rear.
right. And that's the neighbor who's here today, so we'll speak to that, I'm sure.
What's the official limitation on the use of the right-of-way? Is there a
For-
right-of-way recorded against the property?
Correct, we're not proposing to build in the right-of-way. We
No,
haven't,
but isn't there some kind of covenant on use of the right-of-way?
I tried to find it yesterday and I couldn't find it online on Acris. I can look into it, but it is used there are a number of these throughout Huron Hills. It's used as access points to their rear yard driveways. Many of these blocks don't have driveways that open from the front of the street, so in order to park by their houses, they enter in through the rear and park in the rear of their houses. But I can continue a search for the right of way, but I haven't found it. There are currently 12 employees of the school. We have 9 teachers, all of whom live in the immediate area, all of whom walk to the school. And we have 3 rabbis who come from Brooklyn. They carpool in one van, and they park on the street. There's open parking on 72nd Avenue, and they park on the street over there. So there's
What
no.
will be the faculty?
We anticipate that the teachers, generally speaking, the teachers who teach in this nursery are going to be women from the immediate area, as with other nurseries in this area. And we anticipate that they'll continue to walk to the school.
How many teachers are required for the new proposal?
It'll be on the plans with the number per class. It depends on the age of the student. So I have to do a calculation.
Faculty.
Right, I have it on the proposed plans, but I can confirm that.
The plans themselves, work with rated occupancy and not number of faculty.
Okay, I thought he did it based on ages, so I'll confirm it. I'll have them confirm it.
But age is based on rated occupancy.
No, I understand, not Department of
Actually,
Okay. I will confirm it on the plans. The daily schedule we mentioned, we'll put on the plan. We'll confirm it in my statement and put it on.
Before that, what about the congregants? How do they go? How do they arrive from where parks? They're coming every day, different than Saturday.
Right, so with a lot of these, so obviously Saturday, they're gonna walk. The congregation who comes to the synagogue lives in the immediate area, so some walk and some do drive. The hours of the prayer services are early enough that there is substantial parking on Main Street and on 72nd Avenue at that time of day. We do have some concerns and some complaints from neighbors, specifically one, that her driveway sometimes gets blocked by members of a congregation. Rabbi Chaimov Jr., who's the administrator of the building and is here today to speak to you, has given his cell phone number to all of these neighbors, anyone with complaints. The neighbors have made use of his cell phone, and if there are complaints, he goes out and rectifies the situation immediately. We've made routine and repeated requests that they don't park in the driveways. He's actually put cones in front of the driveway for the neighbor across the street so that people are aware of her curb cut. We'll continue to make those efforts and continue to advise our congregants that parking in front of someone else's driveway is not acceptable. On our side of 72nd Avenue, there are no driveways on the street, so there is a substantial amount of open parking. And on Main Street, as I mentioned, on our side of Main Street, they have 3 rows of parking that's available to them. So we encourage and anticipate that they use the open parking, and we're continuing our efforts to become good neighbors. The daily schedule, we've discussed that. I'm going to provide it in my statement and on the plans to discuss each room and how it's used. The number of students enrolled in the school currently is 70, and as I mentioned, we anticipate an extra 20 students next year based on the current need. So projected growth is there, and the need to accommodate these students is there, and there will be, a turnover rate where the older students leave, and we will not hit that 150, 180 students right away. It'll take some time, but it's anticipated that it will grow to that number and that we will want to accommodate and need to accommodate those students to continue on with our mission of instilling that Bukharian tradition and the Sephardic traditions that are so important to this community. As I mentioned, the older kids at this point, we can't accommodate them, so once they hit a certain age, they go to different schools. We're looking for space to create an elementary school and to accommodate the older kids once they leave our school. For the time being, we don't have room to accommodate them, and there are other schools in the area that they go to. Rooftop play area we discussed. We'll confirm the teacher to student ratio on the plans. With regard to the trash room, we have a maintenance person on staff who brings the trash out the day of collection or the night before collection. The trash is stored we recently purchased a large bin on the side of the building to keep the trash until pickup. And as the board has been requesting as of late, we'll work with the architect to create a refrigerated room within the building to control the trash, which should control any adverse effects from the trash. And I believe that is the majority of the questions that were asked, and we've addressed them. I hope if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I guess one thing you didn't address is the fact that the building was illegally constructed, pursuant to a permit that didn't say what was actually constructed. And if the building has been occupied with safety violations by children and congregants for 15 years. So what you didn't address was, since apparently the operators of this institution seem to have had, hence the people who operate the PMA, like the ones who are responsible for ignoring the law, seem to have had a disregard of the law and safety regulations that are imposed by the city of Virginia. My question is, why should the board condone that kind of behavior first? And second, why should the board trust that if this request for granting in any form, one way or the other, that the institution would actually build what it's been approved to do and not just go on with dangerous, illegal enlargements that don't have fire code requirements, don't have the ADA requirements and all that. Because the BSA is not a enforcement agency, we don't have ourselves inspectors standing there while it's happening. So, into that.
The only answer I have at this point is approximately 2 years ago, Rabbi Asaf Chaimoff, who's the administrator of the school, took control of the school and has substantially taken control of the administration of the building. In that time, he's worked with myself and with the architect to determine what needs to be done to bring this building into compliance and what is, those are the steps that he's willing to take, as evidenced by the fact that we came for a variance and that we have filed the smoke alarm plan and that we'll file the sprinkler plan. He spent thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars in this process that if there was a intent for total disregard of the code going forward, he wouldn't necessarily have done. So and as the board knows, there's a 4-year time limit. If he doesn't get his C of O within 4 years, we have to come back to the board. And within that 4 years, if we have been bad neighbors, the community will let you know. And that's the only safeguard I have.
Within 4 years ago, the structure's built. So it's been occupied without a C of O since 1997. Doesn't seem to have bothered the institution.
With legalizations, there are always tough hurdles to overcome, and I understand that.
So
This
let
is
me
a-
just ask you a question. Is the architect here?
Mr. Kelly ended up in beer, but he sent the representative.
Yeah, I don't know if this person is familiar with the project, but my question is, what would it take to bring the structure that exists today into code compliance and, independent of zoning compliance, code compliance? What would it actually take? How long would it take to do it? And then maybe it's worth talking about whether an addition
Okay.
is warranted, because, I'm not feeling that comfortable that it will ever be code compliant.
Okay, I'll have Mr. Caliendo address it and do a thorough analysis. Okay.
Well, I had asked him, how they determined, how they went from a two and a half, two-story homes with a cellar, to this structure, and what happened to the foundations, were they extended, were they deepened, or how was that, and what exactly from the prior structures are still there?
We'll have to figure out how to answer that question based on what we can find from the plans and based on what construction is there. I'll discuss it with the architect too.
Yeah, because, I mean, frankly, you can say you're adding 2 floors to the building, and there's no way the building can handle it, right?
Well, we can also-
How is this building supposed to be handling it?
We could also have an engineer review the plans, review the building to determine and issue a report whether or not it can handle the addition.
Honestly, I don't know if the building was built out, and we don't have any information, because we don't have the alteration plans. Is this a fire resistant building suitable for this use? Never mind sprinklers, or whatever.
We'll work on getting the plans, and if we can't get the plans, we'll work on addressing your concerns in any way possible.
So an engineer needs to do an inspection, indicate what the existing materials are, and then work with the architect about whether such an addition may comply with fire codes for this proposed use of this school. Because technically, this isn't an allowed use, right? It doesn't see a open synagogue.
Synagogue and classrooms.
Classrooms, but is not accessory to the synagogue. It's not clear whether.
Right. School or not. Understood.
And I just want to echo what the chair said. I feel very, very uncomfortable that we cannot find a plan for a permit that has been out there since 1998 for an architect that has just superseded another architect based on I don't know what. And if I were the architect, I would have thought before I would have ever decided that I could supersede something that I have no clue what was actually.
I will speak to Mr. Caliendo and try and answer that.
I think we should,
Yep.
and time justifies it. Because my suggestion then is you're gonna have to dispose of that all on file a new set of drawings of what's there, and to make sure that, as it said, that it's all code compliant, to today's standards.
Yep.
Not 1997.
Oh, understood.
And another question, are you the only one here for this application?
No, we have, the back row is our support.
Your support, is
And-
someone here from the institution itself?
The administrator of the institution sitting in the back, Rabbi Chaim. You have questions for him now? Or?
Let's wait until we learn.
Okay.
Are there any other trustees here? There's speakers on this item?
Sorry, he's from Sydney, someone. Good afternoon, Honorable Perlmutter. My name is Rachel Shore, and my husband Dennis and I own the home directly next to the synagogue. We've lived there for 20 years, and what I'm asking and what we object to is any expansion to the synagogue. Right now, it's like our house is basement, first level, and second level, and their existing edifice now is already like a story and a half taller. Okay. I'd like to point out, which I don't know if anyone brought up, the area where they're calling yards, side yard and rear yard. The side yard is not a yard, it's an area. It's a space as if I made a school out of my home and placed the section next to my house and the house over and had the children play there. There's just a fence that the houses next door to mine put, and then there's the shul and the space in between. And when it's warmer weather and the children are out there, they're out there running around because they have no space. They have some small bicycles that they can only go back and forth, and I've seen them chalk up the side of the building, which I myself pointed out to a young woman who was supervising them or not supervising them. And I've actually seen them, I've gone over there because they're screaming to if they could lower the screaming in a very friendly manner. I love children. And they just like are hanging over the fence as if they just happen to see someone come and talk to them. Okay, concerning the rear yard. Okay, the rear yard, which is just a community driveway that is shared by the homes on 72nd Avenue and the homes on the block back to back. And it is, just goes to the end. There's no drive-through that would end as others do on Main Street. They have had a van that delivers food on a regular basis that speeds down that driveway. And where we park our car sometimes in the back, we have to inch out to avoid the possibility of being struck by this speeding vehicle. And if there are children who are playing in the back there where they shouldn't, because it's not a play yard there, there's debris there, there's wood, there are milk cartons there that have been stacked way high. The children could easily be injured by tripping over that, or God forbid, be struck by this van. Okay. Concerning the children that arrive and depart, what it is if they have a custodian who is an employee of the synagogue, who comes out and he places traffic cones in the street on 72nd Avenue by muni-metered spots. The muni-metered spots, if anyone went shopping on Main Street around the corner, they are obligated to place money in there and place a little receipt on the dashboard to avoid getting a ticket. This individual just places the cone out there. He saves the spot for the parents, either dropping the kids off, and the same thing applies in the afternoon when a parent is picking the children up. Okay, now, I've also seen when they personally pick up their kids in the afternoon, they double park on opposite sides of 72nd Avenue, and if the parent, let's say it's usually the moms, know each other, they'll have conversations across 72nd Avenue, thus backing traffic up, and needless to say, I can't tell you the honking horns that go on and on and on. And many times the parent will take the child unsafely out in the traffic side as opposed to near the curbside. That's a safety thing, and that's basically a parent thing. Okay, garbage bags. We all know the schedule for recycling and regular trash pickups Mondays and Thursdays. Garbage bags, when they sometimes are piled up there a day before, and they're piled in like a pyramid pile, and when it comes to warmer weather where we have some roaming cats or squirrels that could smell the evidence of food in the bag, they will try to rip it open and garbage will spill out or will smell. When they have the recycling, when they have picking up pizza boxes, they're not tied together, they're just piled, in either on one on top of the other or piled in another box. And if it could be a windy day, it could be knocked over and the pizza boxes will start flying. Okay, parking.
If you could just talk faster, because your 3 minutes are up, but I want to hear what you have
I
to
know,
say.
but everyone else had half an hour at least.
No, that's presentation from the applicant, that's different. But so
Okay, all right, I'll try to.
If you could just talk faster.
Okay,
And get all your
okay,
points
all right,
out
concerning
before you
parking.
begin.
Okay, parking is a nightmare on 72nd Avenue. Houses across the street who have a driveway have extended their lawns, concreted over the lawns so they could park the vehicle. So when they park on the other side, they can't figure out where do I park my car because I don't want to block the homeowner's car from pulling out. Okay, and one time I mentioned to a homeowner when the whole thing started that my husband and I, if we've gone out and we come back and have to park down the next block, and especially if we've gone shopping, we need to, walk down to the next block. So his response was, what's the big deal if you take a hike? I mean, and this person was young enough to be, my child. Okay, now, when it's warmer weather and the children are doing prayer services in the morning, the windows are open, which is fine, so are ours. But they're screaming. I mean, I taught in a Jewish day school, and I also handled the prayer services in the morning, and there was never any screaming. You're not supposed to scream while you're praying. It doesn't make it any better heard by, God above. You have to keep it in a normal tone, especially because it's in a residential neighborhood. And I know that the lawyer, Mr. Goldstein, has pointed out about they're gonna work on the violations. The board, community board, and Melissa Katz, Borough President of Queens, has asked them to clear up the violations. My house is next door, I've seen no change at all. No accessibility for ADA, no, the elevator is not worked, I think, since it was placed there. It's like an accessory. And no sprinklers, no alarms. When you walk past the building and you could look into the lobby, they have a pile of boxes on some ledge piled all the way to the top. It could be a fire hazard. So I'm asking that this board please maintain the decision not to expand. They could clear up their violations. We're neighbors, we love children, and we think that they should have a learning environment, but it needs to be a safe environment. And we need to all be good neighbors to each other. They have to take us into consideration as well. We live there, and we want to live there in comfort, like Warren Havability, if it would be an apartment building. Okay, thank you for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Okay, Geneva, the record's about 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we got sort of a summary from this last, so if you could really keep yours closer to 3
Yeah.
minutes.
My name is Dennis Shore. I'm Rachel Shore's husband. I live in the building, the first house right next to the shul / synagogue. I want to good afternoon to the board, and good afternoon to Madam Chairperson. Basically, you said everything I wanted to say, Ms. Perlmutter. I had deep concerns about the violations that are presently open, that the building has against it. Some of them are major. I have concerns about what the use and the occupancy is of the building and the rooms. I think I was one of the people that was getting confused between basement and cellar. I'm just saying that's the bottommost level of the building. When you walk into the building and you go downstairs, that's the basement. And when I call it a cellar, it means that it's just to be a cellar. There's nothing going on in there. You got your boiler there, you got your wash machines there, you got your slop sink there. But some of the violations were saying that upon inspection, they found classrooms down there. Upon inspection, they found a multi-purpose room. I'm concerned that without sprinklers, without a fire alarm system, and if they're not saying what each part of the building is used for, how is the fire department supposed to go ahead and protect them? How is the fire department going to know what's in the building, what to look for, where to go? Other than that, Madam Chairperson, you covered everything that I wanted to say, and my wife covered everything else. So, just like my wife, please uphold the decisions and the findings of the Community Board 8 and of the Borough President Melinda Katz, that they have to bring the building within code and do not allow them to expand the building. What they have in the building right now, fine, it's been there. I'm not saying tear it down. I'm not saying take it away, but not to build another 1.5, 2 stories above. Thank you. Good day.
Hi, my name is Naomi Malavi. My family lives directly across the street from the synagogue on 14142 72nd Avenue. And we experienced the opposite of what was heard from everyone so far. Ever since the building was in operation, my family has only benefited from the strong community and synagogue that was formed. I also teach in the school, and I get to witness firsthand the progress and growth of these children. All of the teachers in our school are dedicated, trained, and experienced professionals. Being a neighbor that lives directly across the street, I do see the issues with parking and traffic. However, these are regular parking and traffic issues one would have with any school on any block in Kew Garden Hills. I see the same thing happening by Charisma Hall, which is the next door to the school. I do see that the school does their best to prevent unnecessary traffic with their arrival and dismissal program. My family is anticipating the growth of this building and strongly believe that it is an important asset to our community.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sharon Marcus. If I could just submit what Dennis Shore. My family and I live across the driveway from the back of Ohel Simcha. And we've been there for 18 years. I am in total opposition to legalize, the variance to legalize and enlarge their building. Ohel Simcha has been a source of trouble and anguish. I could be here all day talking about it. And noise, garbage, being blocked in my own garage. Now, Rabbi Asaf Haimov, as was mentioned by Mr. Goldstein, he's taken on the reins, and he's saying that we have a brand new day. He submitted a letter to Borough President Melinda Katz promising a new order and working more within the framework of our community. Well, you might think that I have against them the terrible nightmare that they had in the 1998 construction, where there was no dumpster, there were no rules, it resulted in rat infestation. I would beg them, there would be nobody home about that. But it's still happening. It's still current, it's still fresh. It was, the neighbors who went through this abuse, they still are bitter and resonate of what that happened. Now, in the letter, that it said, first of all, that would be addressed that cars would not block the garages. There was one blocking mine yesterday. I have photographs to that effect. It said that children would be not let out into the driveway. There is no backyard. It is the driveway. The children are emptied out into the driveway. The letter promised the borough president that this would no longer be happening. I have photographs of January 26th where you see the kids are in the driveway with the rabbi there. And as for the insurances of the improved general upkeep on the premises, because now they have a new employee, I have photographs that I took this morning. It's sheets of ice on the front. Sure. I've also been authorized to speak to the board for Ms. Ruth Broderick. Ms. Broderick lives on one end of the block, and her parents, the Bolks, lived there for since 1940s, and until they passed away. What Ohel Simcha did to their family was unconscionable. By the way, it bears mentioning that when Rachel Shore and I went door to door to introduce this form for objection or consent, many of the neighbors, 4, had not received it at all. One of them owns 4 houses. He didn't receive it in any of his residences. I feel I have to wrap it up, but my final thought is, with all the safety concerns and with kids as young as 2 in the driveway and things going on the Sabbath too, which, by the way, I ran into Rabbi Asaf Haimov at the dentist some time ago, and I was going to bring up the resin tables that they have. They have kid groups on Sabbath sometime when the weather is warm. In the driveway, tables and chairs with kids as young as 2. Something came barreling down, it would be all over. And he said simply, I'm not there on Shabbat. He lives in Brooklyn. So I don't see why, as you said, Madam Commissioner, why are we to believe that this new construction anticipates that they would adhere to the rules when they're not? All this time, they're in the spotlight, they're coming before the board, this is the 4th hearing we've had on the subject, and it's still, to me, it looks like more of the same. I just want to say on behalf of Ms. Ruth Broderick, because she couldn't make it today, she told me there's no hope, they've always won. And there are many others who told me that this is a done deal. I pray that we prove them wrong. And I just want to say that my neighbors, my family, and I are here to see that the truth comes out, and that's the most important thing of all. Thank you very much.
Hello. I'm Avraham Marcus, and as a lifelong resident of a home across the driveway from this congregation, I've been attending several meetings until now on the debate. The congregation of OL Simcha is requesting an expansion of the building. I am against it. OL Simcha is claiming that they are doing their best. According to Yekutiel Davidov, everything is better and everything is different. Rabbi Asaf Chaimov tells us that he's worked very hard for the past 2 years to make necessary changes. In a letter to the borough president, Melinda Katz, it was stated that everything is supervised and the kids are not allowed in the driveway. None of this matters. They can say they are trying. They can say that they didn't know about fire safety regulations or garbage collection. These words do not change the fact that for 18 years, there are still kids playing in the driveway, traffic obstruction, and a blatant disregard for safety and legality. They claim to have control of the issues, but not much has changed. Another major point to bring up is the general attitude towards the community. Any problem we have with them is just our tough luck. Throughout the years, my parents have approached them either for blocking the driveway or for safety issues, and they have been ignored at best. As Rabbi Asaf Chaimov said, the building is very busy, and that is the nature of a busy area. If Ohel Simcha for all these years has been trying to fix their relationship with the community as well as the building itself, there was no major results. Why should we trust them to make it all work now? Why should it be our problem now? As I conclude, I want everyone here to know that I'm not eager to harm a religious institution. I myself being an observant yeshiva attending Jew. I merely want to reveal the attitude and general idea of the opposing side and leave it to the BSA's discretion.
Good afternoon. I'm Mitchell Marcus. I'm neighbor right across the street from OL Simcha, by Haimosh Yeshiva, the husband of Sharon Marcus, the father of Avram Marcus, who they just spoke. Okay, as far as being the biggest bookarian in the area, that probably is true. They're very big institution with a lot of violations. And that they have other synagogues there that came from Rabbi Haimov, from his mentoring and his tutelage, through the years. But those are very small synagogues that can accommodate, but they don't have violations. Never hear anything bad about those Bukharian synagogues or small yeshivas. There's also big yeshivas and synagogues, Bukharian, in Forest Hills and Regal Park. And Forest Hills and Regal Park, from Kew Garden Hills, by car during the week is maybe 5 minutes away. So there are things that are very, very close in the area, at least for the 6 days out of the week. Also, there have been construction from big yeshivas in the general area, Kew Garden Hills, one being even a block away from us, or Chaim, big religious Orthodox yeshiva, and there have been no complaints from neighbors. If there were any, it was very minor. They built a high school there, and it went through, and very peaceful with the neighbors, and there was construction, and that was fine, 1 block from us. Then there's the other one, a Rabbinical Seminary of America, which has what's called a base medrash. That means basically after high school and has a high school. The construction was to have a high school, and maybe there were some minor complaints at first, review board. In fact, I went, they had a community board meeting, and I was on the side of the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva because I knew they wouldn't have violations. They have a track record in Forest Hills, being there for 1950s, the first yeshiva high school in Queens ever. And they have a track record from the 50s in Forest Hills. We lived in Forest Hills for about 4 years, my wife and I. Then we moved out to Kew Garden Hills. And in Kew Garden Hills, there was the debate, and then they had the construction, and it was approved. And there's no complaints from neighbors. And as far as garbage and other construction, there's no complaints about the zoning afterwards. Everything was worked out and satisfied. Neighbors are happy, and it flourishing, the yeshiva's flourishing, and everything like that. And there's a lot of, and they have Bukharians that do go and are accommodated. In the high school, that's a fact. There are Bukharians that go to that high school, and the Bukharians that go to Or HaChaim, which is a block from us. And the Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim, the Rabbinical Seminary in America, is about 7-8 blocks from us. So this is all within the vicinity, all accommodated, all people with no minimum violations. We are religious people. We have nothing against religious institutions. We want it to flourish. We want it to flourish very, very much. And those students could go to Chafetz Chaim, Rabbinical Seminary in America, or Chaim, until maybe in 20 years from now, when all the violations are cleared up from Ohel Simcha. So in 20 years or so, they would be able to attend there. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sivan Chaimov. I'm a parent, a community member, as well as a neighbor that lives on the same block. I used to live in Brooklyn, and I especially made my move to Queens because of the special synagogue and community that is happening at this time. I'm extremely impressed with the community. I feel like I finally found my place. The shul is the center of the community. This is the heart for our kids, and so much is pumping out of the school. And this place is affecting the whole community, and leaders of today, of tomorrow, will come from this place. I can doubt on that. As a new parent, coming from my Sephardic background, I had a hard time finding a good place for my daughter. But the minute I came to the school, I felt so secure that the school would be the right place for her. After having a successful year with my first daughter last year, I decided to send my younger daughter to the school as well. On a side aspect, I happen to be a therapist at the school as well, and I was assigned to certain children there that attend there, and I'm able to really see what goes on behind scenes. There is absolutely nothing, I reiterate that again, that I can say that's harmful. The place is warm, secure, a loving environment, such caring staff, so devoted. I've never seen a school like that. You don't see that around anywhere. I only have good things to say about the place, the way the school runs, the love, the dedication teachers give to our children, and I'm very impressed with the overall program. I can't imagine what me and hundreds of other people in our community will do without granting an expansion. In regard to people who had concerns with the safety, with the drop-offs and everything, I live on the block, and I don't see a commotion with cars whatsoever. And same thing with pickup. Of course, people are picking up their kids, but it doesn't look busy, it doesn't look disorganized, not at the same time. I never see that. And I'm coming from Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is a crazy place. I understand what traffic is. I don't see any of that at all. They were mentioning at the left side of the building, there's like a place for the kids to play. I've seen this myself. I'm there with the students. I see what happens. There's a gate there. There is 2 teachers supervising, so you see exactly what, there's not a safety concern. The place is safe, conducive, and a great place for the children, and it would only benefit the community that you don't have such a strong synagogue in our community like there is in Rabbi Chaimov's shul. I really hope that we can expand the place.
My name is Anna Kaufman. I am actually part of the community for the past 22 years. The father of Rabbi Asaf Chaimov was my rabbi. I actually attended the high school about 14 years ago. I then finished, I became a teacher in the high school. So as part of the committee at once, I know how the board meetings there work, and they're very on top of their teachers. We always had board meetings on how to make sure we're on top of our children and not letting anybody go. I am right now currently an owner of a spa around the corner from the school. So I park my car there every day, and I don't have any problem parking. I don't know if other people do. I mean, I come in at 9:30, I find my spot, I leave at 2 o'clock to pick up my son, come back and I still have a spot, leave again at 4 o'clock to pick up my daughter, come back and I still have a spot. I personally don't think there should be any reason not to give them permission to extend. My daughter attended the school 2 years ago, and my son will be attending this coming September because I don't want any other school but this school because of what I experienced with my daughter. I know that Asaf Jr. right now, he's very on top of everything. Maybe back then it wasn't under the same leadership, but he's very on top of everything he has to be in compliance with right now. So I know he's on top of it, and I do think that our community will benefit from the extension. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Orly Tal. First, I just want to thank everyone the Board of Standards and Appeals for giving us the time today to discuss this important matter. I see that it's really taking a long time also. I appreciate that. As both a staff and community member, I just want to provide you with a little insight of how much of an impact this facility creates on hundreds of lives daily. The synagogue provides its many Sephardic members with guidance, spiritual direction, and a strong sense of community. This building not only contains a synagogue, but a school as well, as we've discussed. Our students range between the ages of 2 to 7, and unfortunately, many of them come from homes with difficult financial situations. Our families simply cannot afford to pay the high tuition costs of the surrounding schools, as someone suggested earlier that maybe they should go to different schools and other, commute further or whatever it is, and are very limited because public school is not able to provide them with the religious education that they seek for their children. Additionally, our school is the only Sephardic school in the area of Kew Garden Hills which teaches according to the Sephardic heritage. This school is created on the basis of helping these families in need in order to build our community. Every student receives individualized attention and love from our trained staff members. The education offered in our school encompasses all subject areas. It follows the New York State Common Core standards and is taught using auditory, tactile, and visual techniques for our many different learners. The environment which we have created is one that fosters warmth, love, and care for each and every single one of our students. Although we have been able to see this amazing progress, our building is also limited since we don't have the space that is needed to have more students in the building. An advisor of mine once gave me a very big insight on life. After pursuing a degree in architecture, he decided to move on to get his doctorate in psychology. So when I asked him why he decided to make this big move, he told me that I want to use my strengths to build people and not buildings. Every single student in our school has the potential to be a future leader of our community. 50 years from now, they will be the one making the decisions and leading our community in the right direction. Now, I know that some concerns were brought up about the children playing in the backyard and stuff like that. I can assure you from firsthand, from seeing what goes on in the school, from running around, making sure that everything is maintained with safety and everything, kids do not play in the backyard. That's number one. Where the parking is, there is no way kids are allowed to be down there. If there are any kids that do play down there, go ahead, send them to the office. I'll take care of that. That does not happen. Also, the mentioning with the drop-off and the pickup, and it's a whole commotion. Usually, just to get a better idea, usually it's not all of the children coming in at once. As the lawyer has said already, most of the children walk. Some are driven, but it's not like 15 cars in one row. It's more like 3 cars at a time. I'll finish right now, sorry. And I hope that with much effort and dedication, our goal is to provide these future leaders with the tools they need to lead. So now, as we consider our very crucial decision-making process, let's shift our focus to the future leaders of this growing community, and just have in mind that we are really very much on top of, right now we're coming at this meeting today to correct all of those things that have been in the wrongs that we've had in the past, and we're just looking for that second chance to let our community flourish and to enable the building to stand in compliance with everything. Thank you again, I appreciate it.
The next speaker is Rabbi Asaf Haimov, the administrator of the school. If you have questions.
Thank you. My name is Rabbi Asaf Haimov. Thank you for your patience and sitting all this out. I'm on pins and needles. I actually do this daily. thanks for caring and taking the time. I very much understand the neighbors' position. I know they're hurt, and I am sensitive as much as I could be to their feelings. Like they've mentioned, I did come into the office 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago, and my first goal was, my father, God bless him, extremely energetic man and all, he got very sick, he's cancer-stricken, and I jumped in. He had a certain way of doing things. Again, I don't know, I'm sure people got harmed in the way. That was not his intention. As you can see, the result of his community, the thousands and thousands of members that came in now. So he's happens to be an extremely sensitive man who his main focus was to build. Unfortunately, the neighbors have been hurt in the middle of all this, and I made it my first business as much as possible. I'm sure the panel here understands that running a school is not the easiest task. You're dealing with public. I'm not in full control of what goes on there regarding parents and all, but I did make it my business to have some how do you say some authority over their complaints with the parents and the garbage and all, just to rectify the cones. That system's not in effect anymore. The last board meeting which we had, it was my bad. It was my mistake. I thought it would help, but I didn't. I considered that I am holding up public parking. But like Orly mentioned, there's the 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 cars coming in a shot. Some parents have a different schedule. Anywhere between 8 and 9 is when they start coming in slow. 9 to 9:10 is when it gets busier, and all the kids are coming in at that time. Regarding so like any other public place, you're pulling up. You can't just park and leave, right? So the kids get off. I try to be there most of the time. It's not always available for me to be there. I live in Brooklyn, but I do have my staff there, making sure that one is there to take the kid out and another one to take them upstairs so the parent can move. Yes, you get a brat of a parent sometimes that says, I just need a minute, this and that. Like I said, I can't, that's out of my control, but I am on top of it. One of the neighbors are not here today, expressed her feelings by the board meeting, and I went over to her. I said, you know what, you could have came to me. Take my phone number. Here's my number. Call me. She's an elderly woman. And she has called. She's called me at least three or four times in the last month and a half that cars have been, she lives in a very busy, she lives also where all the stores are, that driveway. So there's always trucks coming in and blocking whatever. So sometimes 1 out of the 5 cars happen to be from our community. And when she'll call me, I'll see on the camera, if I recognize that the car's out within 2-3 minutes, she's not here to confirm that today, and I'll put a cone by her driveway that no one should be able to park there, because it doesn't even suit a car, to be honest, because the stores are right here and her driveway's right here, and there's maybe 15 feet of parking space, could fit maybe a small car, and she's taking advantage of my number as well. Do I have to wrap up because I have to talk about? Fine, no problem. The garbage, which was mentioned, I went out, I purchased, Orly did it a few weeks ago, she went and purchased one of those $1,000 bins, those commercial bins to keep the garbage in. We do have a worker full-time on premises, and there are times where he may mix up the schedule. He may put it out a night before, maybe a little bit earlier than 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I know from 5 and on is the necessary time. He leaves at 5:30, so there are times he may put out a bit earlier. That can be solved, and that will be solved. I will be on top to make sure that's solved. These are sensitive things which I take responsibility to make sure, as much as in my control, to take care of. Regarding the noise from the kids make noise. Kids make noise, yes, when the windows are open, they have recess, and sometimes the noise does reflect, goes outside the windows. If the board suggests, we don't want any of the future to be blocked because of noise from the kids. If it means that we can't open windows, turn on air conditioners as a substitute, we'll go with that. You know what I'm saying? But I believe that these 3 issues which were mentioned can be worked on. They're hurt from the previous administration of the building and the way it was ran previously. And I was living in Israel at the time, but when they came, and Mr. Dennis, he's come to my office a few times, we had nice conversations, and he knows, and his wife knows, and the other neighbors know as well, that I try hard to be able to do, again, what's in my hands to be able to avoid these problems. I don't want to deal with that. My mind is concentrated on fundraising and building the yeshiva, the school which we're dealing with, and my father's responsibilities which fell upon my shoulders. I just want to explain a little bit of the nature of the community. Take it firsthand. I'm the son, and I grew up witnessing my father's work. It's just not another shul. I'm sure, Madam, you hear about this every day. A shul comes in, or yeshiva came in like earlier, and he needs it just as much as we do. The uniqueness of this shul, and I'll explain to you if you can understand, is that it's not just a regular shul where it has regular members, convenience with the beautiful windows and all. This shul was more or less like a factory where my father took full responsibility for these immigrant Jews. The Jews that came to this shul are from Russia, came here with no money, with no nationality, with nothing on except the clothing and suitcases. They didn't speak a language. My father, who's 62 at the time, 63, and is sick, but in his prime, he made it his business to make sure that these people have a shul, they have a community, they feel like human beings. First thing he did, he's worked on their legal papers. He made them legal. He got the right lawyers to do that. Got them green cards. He got them jobs, in the shul. He got them jobs in the Diamond District because that's what they're good at. He took care of them. This shul took these type of families. That's the families that they're geared at. Many of these women sitting here and many who aren't here, their fathers and mothers reap those benefits from my father and from the building and from the community, from the factory. That's what my father calls it. And their kids today, they're all educated. I mean, these kids, without the building, my father took their kids in for free. There was no tuition at the time. I remember I was in the school because I got kicked out of a different yeshiva when I was younger. I was in there for a year until my father shaped me up, and trust me, he shaped me well, and then thank God I moved on. But there was a year where I was not in a regular yeshiva, and I ended up at my father's school, and I saw these kids come in, and I saw their parents come in. They all spoke Russian. I'm the only one who spoke fluent English, to be honest. I was born here. But and my father made mention out of these people. Literally, mention is the right word. You know what I'm saying? They went on to college. They got married. They raised kids. We know what it's like when people are raised without money. The crazy things they fall into the streets today. Drugs and crime. We don't have that type of experiences in our community. The wives joined the sisterhood from these members that came in from Russia. They started to feel like human beings. They have a building, they have a place where they could connect to. My father was the only one in the last 30 years that was successful in doing that with the Bukharian community. He has a lot of these students today, which you asked earlier, why the shul shrunk in half. A lot of these students of his, the successful ones went off to Israel. They got their rabbinical certificate after learning for several years in Israel underneath my father's guidance, his yeshiva there. They learned underneath his auspices. They came back, and my father pushed them. Okay, you go to that block needs a shul. You go there, that area needs a shul. So a lot of his young students are not in the shul anymore, and they opened up, break-offs. They're all branches, though. My father is the leading rabbi. He goes to their shul to speak. He gives them all the strength and inspiration they need. My father is the main rabbi, even though he's sick. He's still there. He's not in his prime anymore. I'm trying to kick in as much as possible. But he is the one that built the community. He built the whole Sephardic Bukharian community. And unfortunately, again, like I said, I'm sensitive that some people got hurt in the way. I want to clear that up. I feel I can. I feel I'm capable of. We turn to you. I was the first one in the office says, Daddy, this doesn't make sense. How do you operate this way? How do you operate this way where there's no sprinklers, there's no fire alarm? Because every time I try to turn around and to apply for this, apply for that, they ask me for the papers, and when they call me up, they're like, can I get your fire code? I turn to Papa, I said, where's the fire code? Yeah, you have to check in that drawer there, and I was able to put it together, but it expired. They didn't keep up with it. At the time it was built, they didn't have as many students. So now I turn around, I'm stuck. I turn to Jerry Kelly and I says, get me out of this. Let's approach them if whatever needs to get done. Let's raise our hands and say, what I'm saying? We need your help. We want to legalize this building. No one from our community, Madame, spoke to you in 30 years. I stepped up to the plate because I want to make a difference. I don't want to deal with the headaches of, like they mentioned, which drives me insane, by the way. They're right, with the violations. I want that cleared. We're going to pay whatever it takes. We spend tens of thousands of dollars and many more to come if we get granted, if we get recognition. I want to clear that up. I want to be able to start with a clean slate and be able to take this community to the next level. My point in all above is that this shul is not a standard shul. It's not a regular shul where people come for convenience or whatever. It's vital. It's vital. The community needs it. The members need it. You heard what a few said here. And there's many others that would have been here had they not been working. It's a regular work day today. There are a lot of petitions that were given in for the approval of this place, over 600 or 700, whatever it was. Every person that signed that petition is emotionally connected to that shul. It's not like we stood in the street with a table and a stand, say, oh, come sign here, come sign here. Every person's like, where do I sign? I got one per family. I didn't get each person over 18. Well, 85, 90% of them are one per household. you know, we're Jews, we have a lot of kids over 18. If we would have stopped if we would have got the families, it would have been over 2,000. It's not the point. My point is that who got more, who got less, not the idea. The idea is that as a whole, this community needs it. You see that there's a need. The school is full. I'm not going to take any more kids this way. I'm sorry. I'm not putting myself in more trouble. I want to get out of trouble. I'll find a temporary location if the board recognizes us and gives us some type of grant, some type of permission. We want to fix it up. We want to get ourselves in our place. We want to play the game right. We want to do it right, and I want to be able to. I'm young. I don't want to deal with this when I'm 50. Take care of it now. Let's get it over with. So the next 30 years, we can give these kids a proper education. Dear panel, again, this is a religious issue. This is a very sensitive issue. I know it's going to be hard to make a decision. These kids, we're not approaching you for, we want to make condominiums or whatever. It's a school. It happens to be in a busy location. Even if we were not there and someone else took over the shul, they'll still have to deal with the parking. It's a shul. Unless you want to close it down and tell us to turn it into a pizza store or whatever, there'll still be traffic. It's a shul. It's been a shul for 30 years. If we can't continue maintaining it because we don't get approved, another shul takes it over, it's going to be this. That's the nature of the place. It happens to be off a very busy road. There's a charisma hall right on the corner. They also have events at night. Again, this is something which Main Street is a busy place. 72nd Avenue also is a busy place. That corner, there's cars coming up from Van Wyck on 72nd. Main Street's a busy place. The parking, which Dennis brought up and his wife, is an issue. But it's not only from us. A lot of people don't want to pay the muni-meter parking, so they'll turn into the first block. I mean, you've seen this in your neighborhoods as well, I'm sure. And they'll park, on the normal street. Everything's accessible from 72nd Avenue. And the end of the day, I'm trying to say is that these issues which were raised, I will take responsibility. I will take full responsibility to take care of. You've mentioned to Jay Goldstein, Madame, that you needed certain papers and all. We will make sure that gets presented as much as in our capability. I don't want that to stop us from our mission of educating these kids. And then the day we're keeping them off the street, we're dealing with them, we're raising them, we're giving them an education, we're working with local yeshivas that will be able to take them, when they get into grade school, that they can continue their learning there. But I know that the board has to make a decision. I understand that it's going to be a hard decision to make. Please consider all the above when making your decision, and I ask, and with this I'll end, please don't let the kids and the community members and the sisterhood, don't let them pay for our mistakes. Whatever you feel that we should do to get ourselves in our game, I'm willing, but please not on their account. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I do have a question.
Sure.
The van that's going into the right of way, what is it doing?
That's done. That you're not going to see that van anymore. Their contract is up. What they do is
What were they doing?
they serve the shul food. Now these caterers, you're right. Yes, they are right. The driver is some guy. He's not from the shul. He's a driver that works for the catering company. And you talk to him. You're talking sometimes to a thick wall. He doesn't get it. When the son is driving it, he listens. I tell him park. There's a house in the back of the shul, which is connected. It's 2 over hers. That's a member of our shul. So he lets me park my car there. I think the kid she was talking about was my daughter, by the way. I was walking her to my car. I'm sure I checked both ways to make sure there weren't any cars in the driveway. But that van, once we get any type of permission, if it's going to be granted, that is out. That contract is up because the building's going to be under construction, and I'm not renewing it for them. They know that already. It's a month-to-month basis for now, and we're done with them. Hopefully by March, April, whenever we could go forward, that's going to be done. You're not going to hear about this van anymore. You have my word. We're not happy with them as well because I don't have to pay for his mistakes now. If this is going to put any weight on your decision, I'm not interested in taking that responsibility for him. So, but if you're asking what went up to now, that van used to deliver food for the shul. It had nothing to do with the school. The school gets their food and could deliver from the front door, and it goes straight upstairs to the classroom. So already divided in proper tins and compartments.
Okay, so then we're talking about the proposed conditions, right? The shul is being reduced to, according to plans, it's like 110 people.
We're not going to need it so big anymore because the kids are not going to be sitting with their fathers anymore. They're going to have classrooms. Hopefully, if this goes through, they'll have their own programs. All the neighbors' issues with the noise, 80% of that will be solved. Sure, let's go through one by one. Go ahead, please.
So the shul is now, in the proposed, is reduced to seating for about 108 people, something like that. And then there's that lower level that's described as a multi-purpose space. What's that used for?
The multi-purpose space is an important use for the shul and for the school.
What is it used for?
So it's used, sometimes we have PTA or assemblies, or we're gonna have orientation. The mothers come to the school, it's gonna be very difficult to stuff them all in a classroom with their kids. So the suggestion was that we should leave that bottom open area, or if, if we ever decide to make classrooms, it should be like the partition, not the regular standard walls, if we're gonna need that space for classes. But it's important that we have an open area also for the shul when we have our dinners. There's once a year annual dinner, sometimes we may have. We didn't have it in a while, but it's a good fundraiser, or a Chinese auction, or sometimes there's a kiddush, which means one of the members of the shul had a baby or something like that, they wanna have a luncheon. We have to offer that to the shul. And it's also, it will be good for the school as well.
And then how is it that there's not gonna be any delivery for food for the shul?
It's not, you see, the shul now, every Shabbos has lunch, third meal, which is Saturday afternoon. That stopped. That's coming to an end now. That won't be in effect anymore. Hence, we won't have that van driving up and down the driveway anymore.
But what about you're having annual dinners, you're having a PTA, orientation?
So I'm sorry.
Related that to that?
No, okay, so before we go forward with your question, I left out a point. The blue van also, the reason why they're coming often, like once a day or whatever it is that they also keep their utensils for practical purposes in the shul's kitchen. They have like a storage space where they put their plates and whatever. So they already have an order for me that I don't want it there anymore in the building. It's just taking up space. It's stinky. I don't want to deal with it. Just get rid of it. So that he told me he needs a month. I just have to find a new place. I need 30 days. He just got a call from me February 1st. So that they just keep their stuff. It's not part of the deal, by the way. They're not supposed to be doing that. But I was nice to him. Okay, whatever. You need the space. Use it. We're not using it anyway. But that's what's causing him to come to the school more often than necessary. So that hopefully in 30 days will and you can check up on us. That will be those plates and dishes won't be there anymore. So hence the van won't be coming as often. He won't be need to come as often. Regarding Saturday, Shabbos, the food thing is coming to an end as well. It's done already, by the way, the Shabbos food. It's not there anymore. I'm saying not from that caterer.
Are you the rabbi?
My father is. I'm not there on Shabbos. I'm there during the week.
So then how can we be sure that the same care would be given on the Saturday?
So like I mentioned, and like Jane mentioned earlier, I will be responsible for the youth programs on Shabbos. In other words, my staff will be working on Saturday as well. A lot of the members of the shul have their kids in the school. So they're already familiar with the staff, and the staff familiar with them. And it will be an extra service, of course, to the shul. Extra service. It'll be a service for the shul, which I will be handling. I'll be in full control of the youth program. The only problem we have on Shabbos is not cars, because we don't drive, no deliveries, because we don't drive, and we don't have food on Shabbos. The only problem, which was mentioned, which was true till a month ago or 2 months ago, was the kids playing outside. And my father has made it clear in the shul, don't bring any more kids. I haven't been there, but I've heard it's been better the last 2 months. They can confirm that. I can't confirm that. But you do have my word that once we do get our classrooms, we will have...
You're not going to bring kids to the shul?
My father said that you cannot bring the little kids who cannot sit in shul, who cannot sit with their fathers. Cannot...
That means I remember this as a little kid. I couldn't go to the shul, so I played in the backyard behind the shul.
So you're right. So we don't have that option, like she mentioned. It's a driveway, and it is a careful. People drive there. At Shabbos, nobody. I'm saying it's.
So the point is, it's the right of way for driving, not for kids to play.
Correct. So that's why we want to stop that, and my father did. No kids come to shul now. The kids who cannot sit with their fathers.
You're not going inside, so the father doesn't have any place to put the kids, so it's like, go play in traffic.
That's right. Go play. That's right. Which is it's irresponsible, but.
So how are you gonna? No. So
we're gonna have classrooms. We're gonna have classrooms with proper professional kids programs. Telling you, you're going to want to see that professional with prizes.
So
they're going to raffles, bicycles, you name it. They're going to love it.
you need to describe exactly how. This is sort of like free association in front of
Sure.
us. They need to see a real program that's going to deal with the fact that you've got kids kind of wandering around while dad's inside. The kids not anything to do.
So what I believe Rabbi Chaim meant is, and my father also used to tell me about playing traffic because he would deal with me, but not in shul, just at home. Rabbi Chaim meant is his father had mentioned.
Speak about your parents like that on the record.
I'm sure my father will present in front of this board soon enough, and you can ask him. What Rabbi Chaimov mentioned is that Rabbi Chaimov Sr. is instructing that any children who can't sit in synagogue throughout the duration, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, should be left at home. Not that they should come and be
That's
sent.
not a solution.
No, it's not a solution. It's a temporary solution until we, God willing, go forward. And if we're able to go forward, we'll provide the youth department for the existing building, for the proposed building.
With professional programs, with the kids doing their programs.
That's how, I grew up, the older kids, when we became bar mitzvah, had our own services in one room of the building. It taught us to be leaders of our community, taught us how to lead the services. The younger kids sat there and were monitored by members of the community. There were prizes at the end of the 2-hour stretch, usually something from Oriental Tradings, and, they went like that.
I won't bet the bike. No, I raffled a bike. In the end of 4 months, we did a bike thing.
Little bribery going on. Bribery for a couple of hours.
So, so the thing, it seems like the main complaint from the neighbors is the trash, which must be dealt with a refrigerated room, right? And must be dealt with some kind of trash storage space that's on the interior, only brought out when trash pickup is occurring, like that morning or that night. Is there a caretaker who lives in the building or
In the area.
Comes in every day. Comes in at 7. His day starts at 7 or 7:30. Now,
So it needs to be coordinated with the pickups. Let's just go through it.
sure.
The next one has to do, of course, with the parking. We need a lot more information on what your drop-offs are and how you're gonna actually handle the drop-offs, so it doesn't become a nuisance. If it means further DOT, enclosure, so that you have very clean drop-offs, so be it. I mean, we need to look at that with the traffic consultant as opposed to making this something to go along in front of us.
No problem.
Which is what a lot of people do. And then the other thing is that the right of way is actually for the use of everybody, it's not yours, right? The reason you're having this problem is because whoever was in charge, built in your rear yard illegally, right? So as a result, you don't have any outdoor space to put anybody. In this proposal, the only place the kids can go is on your roof, your rooftop play area, because you don't have a backyard to play in, and the right of way is not a backyard to play in.
Right.
For drop-offs and deliveries, I've actually never heard of those right of ways being used by, other than the cable guy, to actually stop there. So that would not be where traffic is blocking, the driveway is blocking. Can you create, a plan that we see that would become part of whatever it is you decide to approve, where if you're in violation of it, that can put your whole approval at risk, right? So a clear plan about how that right of way is gonna be used, how it's gonna be regulated, fencing if necessary. I think that's probably what we need, fencing so that people from within the school synagogue cannot get access to the right of way. Maybe it's something where there's only free access to it by caretaker or that kind of thing.
I don't know what that issue with the right of way is now. Is it cleaned up of all the debris that some of the neighbors were complaining about?
The right of way means
The back of the rear.
yeah, that is
What
clean.
people call a rear yard, but it isn't.
Right. No,
Driveway.
the driveway, the shul, if you're talking about what separates between the shul and the neighbor's house, that corridor, that is left open. There is milk crates piled up underneath the staircase. I would say, I
Those
don't.
fire stairs?
Not blocking the
Fire
staircase.
stairs?
No, it's underneath. Say there's a staircase going up. So it's like an outdoor area. It's like a dead area. So they use those crates for bishop, whatever, one of these Jewish things. So it's piled up on the corner against the building, and
You see photographs,
They're not
those will go away, right?
Everything will go away.
Yeah, that's the
I will-
plan.
So
I
we're
will
gonna
supply
clean that from the
photographs.
fire stair.
This one?
yes, that's the one.
It'll be cleaned up and I will take photos and show, yes. Yes, we will.
No, this is actually a fire stair. The whole idea is that the fire stair does not catch fire.
This is not.
The clue, you don't have anything flammable. You're not allowed to store it anywhere near the fire.
Everything will be cleaned up in the rear.
The other thing is, because it sounds like construction is
if I could just say something, I'm gonna repeat that again from before. I know that on record, it doesn't look bright, everything that took place in the last 20-plus years, and that is not the way I wanna do things. Like I said, I approached this board, I approached the community board, I approached the architect, I approached the lawyer. It's the first time in the history of that building that somebody is, wanting to do it right. And that's my main objective, because it won't be worth it, A, to have this relationship with neighbors, continuous relationship with neighbors, and B, you can't grow. I mean, you can't operate that way. It's not feasible. It's not possible to operate that way, and, I'm turning to you.
Also, looking at, for instance, if you had a setback at the rear, that would be a place for the children potentially to go. It would also pull away from the rear because of the position on your neighbors. Back.
Right, as discussed, we're gonna look at ways to move some of the classrooms, see if we can reduce the bulk of the building.
And the other part of it, though, you showed really just two institutions in the entire 400-foot radius, one of which is literally on the line of the 400 feet, that there are really no other examples of smaller buildings. You need to make a better argument about the neighborhood character.
So the neighborhood characters we've described, and as some of the opposition actually discussed, Kew Garden Hills, in and of itself is not limited. I don't think it's fair to limit us to a 400-foot radius for character of the neighborhood, because a lot of people, and myself included, when I walk to synagogue, I'll pass 5 shuls on my mile walk to go to my shul. So the neighborhood character is encompassed by all of the community facilities that these people, that the neighborhood and the
Well, you're looking only at community facilities. What about the other buildings?
I
What
can
about
look for
buildings? We're talking about neighborhood character, not community facilities. So you have to look at that, and maybe that's something that, more of an urban analysis is needed.
I'll speak to Ian.
Any other comments?
Just to provide some progress towards curing the violation.
I'm gonna speak to Mr. Caliendo and see what can be done to move forward.
I'm preferring a two-step process.
We've actually spoken.
Figure out the violations and then we talk.
We actually already approached Cone Hockman, which is one of the big violation companies, to start addressing our violations, and we've discussed with them, and they have the property, and we're gonna start working with them.
Okay, so let's,
5
we
weeks.
need a lot of time. What?
5 weeks at a minimum.
Good. So I think now we're up to the March 24th hearing, right? So you can make a submission on, actually, this, like, March 6th submission, which is a Friday, for March 24th. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Time for the opposition or anything?
Well, we had all the speakers. Oh, opposition. It's true that you can review, so the way that it works, because you're not represented by counsel, let me just explain it. The submission, you can get a copy of the submission if you designate a person to receive a copy of the submission. Okay, so maybe, right. So then, okay, so then if, so if we have a submission on Friday, March 6th, then what we call opposition can have until the 13th. Is that fair? 1 week?
John?
1 week, the 13th to respond, so you get to review and to respond to their submission, which keeps us, because we skip a week, it keeps us on the hearing date of March 24th.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
This concludes the February 3rd, 2015 public hearing.
We have one on the time again.
I don't know if we did it today.
Did we do it today? You didn't think Eric
We
was
didn't do
gonna
it
go?
last week.
Did you think Eric was gonna go an hour and a half?
Oh, my God, no.
We always get